29th RTD Board meeting to order. We're convened as of 5:33 p.m. I'd respectfully ask everyone to remain muted unless you are recognized to speak. Thank you all for joining us this evening. As the board has moved to in-person meetings for our monthly gatherings, please note that committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will still be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practical on the board's website. Visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. During tonight's meeting, we're also providing Communication Access Real-Time Translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who'd like to access a live transcript of this meeting. I will now actually lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call on Director Geisinger. Would you please read out loud the land acknowledgement?
The RTD Board of Directors acknowledges that the land on which our buses and trains operate is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to these lands. We honor our indigenous elders who have traveled, inhabited, and stewarded these mountains, hills, and plains throughout generations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of inequity of the Native and all historically oppressed peoples, and recognize their current and future contributions in the district as we move forward.
Thank you, Director. I'll now call the roll. Treasurer Banker. Director Busick. He is an excused absence. Director Catlin.
Here.
Director Chandler.
Present.
Director Geisinger.
Here.
Director Guchenritter.
Here.
Director Guzman.
I'm here.
Director Harwick. Absent. He might be joining us later. Staff, if you would like to note when he joins us. Director Larson.
I'm here on Zoom.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Nicholson.
I'm ready.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Present.
Director Pagliari.
Present.
Director Rusha.
Present.
Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
Present.
I am present as well, so we have 13 present, 2 absent. There are no retiree awards. There are no retiree awards for this evening. The second quarter retiree awards will be announced at the June 29th Board of Directors meeting. We now will move into public participation, which is open to anyone who would like to address the board. As we have both in-person and remote attendees, in-person comments will go first, followed by those who are participating remotely. For those attending in person, please come up to the podium when your name is called. If you have not already signed up to speak and like to do so, please approach the podium when I call for any additional speakers. For those attending virtually, if you wish to speak and have not already done so, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you're dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that by participating in this process, you're being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments will have to be submitted via writing. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials for the board, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, please email those materials to the board office at rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. During this time, the board will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you'd like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. Speakers should begin their remarks by stating their names and will have up to 3 minutes to provide their comments. Our first in-person speaker tonight and first speaker is Keith Brooks.
Hello, Keith Brooks. You all knew the good times couldn't last. I'm back. Yes, Chris. I've returned with a bountiful harvest of low-hanging fruit, a way to improve some services for, if not free, close to it. I am speaking about, I've actually had to write this down, the 0L, 3L, CV, EV, P, and some, but not all, 116X, 145X, 169L, LD1, RX, and FF5. All of these are buses that either some or all of them only run in the peak direction, into the city in the morning, out of the city in the afternoon and evening. However, the physical buses themselves and the operators driving them are running bidirectionally. And so for these services, you could double the frequency from sometimes it's as pitiful as 3 round trips a day to 6 by simply allowing people to get on the bus that is already going there. And because all of these, except for maybe arguably the 3L, are very express buses, this really doesn't add a bunch of time. There may be some reason out there, if you go digging, maybe something to do with the collective bargaining agreement and operator hours versus service hours or something like that. But there is a difference between any reason and a good reason. And the fact of the matter is these buses are already going to a place where not a lot, but some people are also trying to go. And letting them on the bus is free. Would be really cool is if these round trips could be evenly spaced throughout the day to like every 2 hours rather than every 1 hour in the morning and then 1 hour in the evening. But that's more of a philosophical change about getting out of the 19th, 20th century mentality about commuter buses rather than regional buses. But I offer this humble suggestion for the improvement of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Our next speaker is Landon Hilliard.
Hello, Board of Directors. My name is Landon Hilliard. I'm a transportation planner with Boulder County, and I'm here to deliver you a letter of recognition for the outstanding service and commitment of staff, namely Teresa Rinker, who leads the EcoPass Market Development Team, and Natalie Handlos, who leads the Service Development North Team. The reason for this, and I'm representing 5 members of an advisory committee of the EcoPass district in the town of Nederland. The reason for this is for their attributes of responsiveness, efficiency, and effectiveness, which come in are high value in a large organization like RTD with many moving parts. And the context here is an EcoPass program in the town of Nederland, in which Teresa Rinker and her team helped stand up by quickly administering the contracts and by giving advice about how to engage RTD staff for the contracting. The second part with Natalie Handlos and her teammate Greg Filkin has to do with her relentless effort to improve service of the NB, which is a critical route between Nederland and Boulder, and has been the desire of the community for years to see the service restated. So this 1-2 punch, if you will, of engaging an EcoPass contract swiftly, as well as thinking about improved service of the NB, has left residents of Nederland happier than can be. And their representatives, these 5 members of the advisory committee, have drafted a letter to present to you to recognize these 2 and their teams. So for the record, I'd like to read the names of the teams. First, this letter comes from 5 members of the NEPIDAC, which is the Nederland EcoPass Public Improvement District Advisory Committee. Let's call it NEPIDAC. And the 5 members are Andrew Bliss, Susie Gallaudet, Tom Mahold, Tierney Maris, and Eugene Smith. And the two teams that should be recognized, especially their leaders, Teresa Renker and Natalie Hanselos, are the Marketing Development Group, led by Teresa, and then followed by Dawn Plooster, Valerie Padilla, Bailey Manfro, Joy Cautry, John Lopez Algeria, Reina Cubias, and Lily Avila. And then, of course, coming down to the Service Development North team is Natalie Hanslos and Greg Filkin. Thank you for the time to be able to recognize these this outstanding service and commitment of this group. Again, because of their responsiveness and ability to listen. 2, because of their efficiency in carrying out their jobs. And 3, their effectiveness of successful outcomes.
Thank you for your comments, Lampin. Our next speaker is Emma Griffin.
Hi, my name is Emma Griffin, and I am a co-lead for Greater Denver Transit and a resident of District A. I'd like to take the time to personally thank the RTD staff, GM/CEO, and the Board of Directors for their recent safety and security improvements to personal presence on light rail vehicles and at light rail stations. I recently had my fare checked by an allied security employee on back-to-back days on the H and E lines respectively, and also noticed my fare checker getting on and off vehicles to spend time visibly present at the Colorado station as well as the I-25 and Broadway station. This is exactly the type of visible presence that riders and prospective riders have been asking for, and I believe continuing these efforts will have a noticeable positive impact on safety and ridership. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Emma. That was our list of in-person speakers. Mr. Kroll, any hands online? Oh, yes. Oh, could not sign. Okay. Let's do our online, and then I'll ask for any in-person speakers. Mr. Kroll.
Thank you, Chair Bouquet. Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. At this time, there is no one online signed up to provide or with their hands raised indicating they wish to provide public comment.
All right. Any speakers who would like to make comments in person, please step up to the podium.
Hi, Paulo Solorzano, RTD Riders Alliance. Just a couple of points. Want to make super quick if I can get them in. So again, going to bring up real-time signage, real-time systems, the next ride. It's still down. I know they're being worked on, but the thing is, it's the A line. It needs to be working right now. It's an international airport. It's one of the busiest in the nation. Also, they come on and off right now, so it gives the illusion that they may be working and then they are not. One thing I'm going to ask, and I've been asking a lot of staff and all that over the years, is can they be turned off? Simply just turn them off if they are known to be displaying incorrect information. Is that something that can be done or not? And now that they're being worked on with the new systems and software, is that a vulnerability that they will have in the future? That needs to be looked at, because if we're going to have a system like that for the next 10, 20 years, that's not going to work. Now that there will be more rail maintenance and you know, the customer-facing real-time systems are still completely unreliable. With no ETA, there is a need for a permanent team or a couple of teams similar to the impact team that was first deployed in 2024 to support the coping panels and downtown rail reconstruction project. The amount of money that RTD would spend on impact teams would be magnitudes of order less than the financial, medical, and employment impacts that the local transit-dependent population would endure. Riders have already been devastated by a lack of accurate information on site at light rail stations, a lack on social media, and a lack online on RTD applications. The devastation never needed to happen, and it can be alleviated with simple, accurate information. And congratulations and thanks to Steve Marangano on finally being appointed chief. In my eyes, he has shown that he upholds community policing values that Coloradans want to see. Community policing is a set of strategies where law enforcement partners with the communities they serve to address local problems. And it emphasizes building relationships, engaging residents, and collaborating on solutions. And Steve Marangano has done all that. So best of luck to him. And on that note, Now that there's more fair enforcement and more sworn officers out there, it's absolutely imperative that people who are experiencing economic hardships are not cited for fare evasion due to having expired 3-hour passes, especially during periods of mass cancellations, as we've been experiencing for the last 2 years. That happened to me, and that's why I started this alliance. I was on crutches. I was kicked off a train. On a similar note, and now that we may hit positive turning point, Martin Gano, Chief, we cannot forget about security guards. Allied security guards, they need support. Telling them to disengage in cramped quarters on a bus or rail car, simply just saying disengage, disengage is not, it doesn't work. So please start taking security guards, their feedback seriously. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Paulo. Are there any other speakers in person? Anyone? All right. Mr. Kroll, any comments emailed for tonight's meeting?
Yes, you all have several comments that we will enter into the public record. Mr. Hilliard, Landon Hilliard spoke earlier about the commendation for EcoPass, for staff who work on the EcoPass program. We will enter that into the record. GDT submitted a letter on the topics of slow zone and light rail fare enforcement. Riley Peters submitted a letter citing a myriad of ongoing issues. Michael McBride sent a quick note indicating his support for the Longmont to Denver train project. And Susan Myers wrote in earlier this month regarding access on demand.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. With no other participants in the queue, we will close the public participation period at this time. There are no external entity reports for this month under our item for external entities. So we'll move on to the audit committee report. I know Committee Chair Busick is gone. Director Catlin, would you share anything, or would you like to share anything regarding the audit committee?
At this point, I have nothing to share. There's no update this month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Catlin. We move on now to the Finance and Planning Committee report. Committee Chair Guzman, anything to share?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finance and Planning Committee met April 8th. We discussed the sales and use tax forecast delivered to us by CU Leads. Good, robust conversation for anybody interested in a hefty document with a lot of good information. Very makes you hold your breath while you're reading through it. I'll say that. We have to deal with some issues that are coming our way, and I know that this board can do it. We also took one action for the 2025 fiscal policy to come to this board tonight. It was placed on unanimous consent. As I have previously discussed with you, I'll be asking for that to be removed to make one quick amendment that was not done during committee. The next meeting is going to be May 13th, and we will be discussing the Colfax BRT update. We will have an external entity discussion with the State Demographer's Office. We will be talking about equitable transportation-oriented development and are expecting to take action on that to deliver it to the board by the end of the month. And we have requested as a committee an update on capital improvement projects from staff. We may have to move that later in the calendar depending on the timeline for our meeting. But we're looking forward to having another set of good, robust conversations. They're always fun on finance and planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Chair. Moving on to the Operations Safety and Security Committee report. Committee Chair Rusha, do you have anything you would like to report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always hard to follow up after Committee Chair Guzman goes. No, we, and I also apologize because I didn't have my computer set up. Would you mind to give me a second so that I can give a report after our performance chair goes again?
Absolutely.
So I can grab my notes.
Absolutely. You just will have to follow up with Committee Chair Guzman. So
I know, just raise the stakes.
Performance Committee report. Committee Chair Guzman.
Double whammy. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Performance Committee met on April 14th. We discussed the 2021-2026 strategic plan updates, and I presented a timeline of what can be expected for this year's annual performance assessment review of the general manager CEO. highlighting key dates along our calendar that everybody needs to be prepared for on Performance Committee, as well as for the board. If you did not watch that meeting, I would suggest reviewing it. Make sure you at least peruse the dates and the months that are going to be key for the board to complete its work on time with respect to reviewing our general manager and CEO. I would like to invite everybody to the 512 Performance Committee. We will be having a conversation. Vice Chair Guchenritter and I are working to make sure that we have the updated performance assessment tool ready to discuss at that time based on this year's goals and the changes that were made in January, so that we can proceed with understanding and have that in front of everybody. So we're all considering that well in advance and not in a rush to the finish line, preparing those review statements and keeping track of everything that's gone on in a whole year. It gets real rough around the holiday time if you haven't done the work in advance. So we're trying to get it out early and then have room for conversation afterwards. By no means is it a final conversation, it's just the beginning. Also, I believe today we sent out, thank you to the board office staff, particularly Ms. Parrish, a request to the members of the committee. As was discussed previously, we would be splitting the quarterly check-in with our general manager CEO from any other substantial matters. We will have one small report on the employee service survey, the employee survey, and then we will immediately be adjourning into a quarterly conversation with General Manager CEO Deborah Johnson at the next planned meeting, or in June, at the June 2nd meeting. And then we are asking for members to make themselves available June 23rd. And we will be receiving at that time, we anticipate, the customer value and customer experience deep dive. And that is because we will have the responses from the customer experience survey on rail and bus and paratransit available, so we can go through that in depth to understand the current state of things at RTD from the customer perspective. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Committee Chair. For the state of the record, I do see Director Harwick has joined us virtually. Welcome, sir. Committee Chair Risha.
Thank you, sir. For the state of the record, my co-pilot Harwick joined us just as I was about to go, so I couldn't pass the baton. But ordinarily, Director Harwick gives these updates. So we did meet on Wednesday, April 9th at 5:30. It was a pretty long meeting. We had a special guest, Earl Lee, come to talk to us on paratransit matters. We had no items for action, but we did have other discussion items, including our comprehensive annual safety presentation, which was very excellent and very much appreciated. Thank you. We got our, twice yearly update from RTD PD, and that was very much appreciated. I know that folks had to juggle schedules, as committee members had requested that be moved up on the calendar so we could hear from our acting chief / chief as soon as practicable. And then finally, we rounded out with a fairly lively discussion on Title VI and the agency's Title VI proposal. In that meeting, it was strongly suggested that those with questions, concerns, or any kind of comments, please kindly respond to the board office survey that went out so that staff can give you time and address those if you have them, and or just email our GM CEO directly and copy me if you're comfortable. For those who are on OSS, notices have gone out about the Title VI proposal, which was put out to the public, if not January, it was very early February. But for other directors who are not on OSS, it is a lot of paperwork and it might seem overwhelming. So I'm just encouraging to please talk to staff if you have questions or concerns so that they can adequately address them. I'm always happy to help, but I do not have that level of SME. And with that, I believe we adjourned sometime after the 4-hour mark, but we got a lot of business done otherwise. And our next meeting will be at the regular time and date stated. So that would be Wednesday, May 14th at 5:30.
If you are unable to make it, as a courtesy reminder, please notify your chair if you will be absent for all or part of the meeting so that we know who is present. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Committee Chair Rusha. Moving on is the approval of the board meeting minutes and committee reports. The board and committee minutes were included in the board packet. And are there any corrections from the board for the minutes to be approved this evening? Any corrections? Director Rusha?
Thank you, sir. I just, could we pull off, the OSS, was that April 14th? I just had it in my notes. Or did we already pull it off? You and I had a discussion about that and I wasn't sure.
We haven't pulled off anything yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
would it be okay if we, I think there might be some minor corrections to OSS. Is it okay if we pull that off and then we discuss in the interim and we'll just bring it back next month as we have done previously when there might be some minor corrections?
And then the date on that meeting, I'm sorry, was that
I'm sorry, that was April 9th.
the April 9th
Yeah,
meeting?
that was April 9th.
Okay, so pulling off the April 9th OSS meeting. And then making a couple corrections, and then we'll hear that for May. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, unless there is objection to considering the minutes all at the same time, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes for the following board meetings?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Haven't even stated the dates. Don't worry, I did that the first time when I got into the board too. March 25th, 2025 board meeting, April 8th, 2025 Finance and Planning Committee, April 14th, 2025 Performance Committee, April 22nd, 2025 Study Session, April 24th, 2025 Executive Committee. Now I can have a mover.
So moved.
I have Director Rusha as the mover,
Second.
and I have Nicholson as the second. Thank you. Oh, any discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Are there any no votes on this action item? Seeing none, it'll pass 14, 0, and 1. All right, moving on to our next item is going to be my chair's report. First, I want to thank our recently appointed Chief of Police and Emergency Management, Stephen Martingano, as well as the RTD police officers for their swift response last night to an awful act of violence at Union Station. The courage and decisive action that our officers ensured the public was kept safe. My thoughts are with the shooting victim and their family. GMCO Johnson intends to update us further on the events of yesterday evening during her report in a few moments. Next, I would want to send a thank you to Board Executive Manager Jack Kroll and former RTD Director Jamie Lewis, who attended yesterday's Denver City Council meeting. The City Council voted on a proclamation supporting the community's efforts to propose an honorary name for Civic Center Station recognizing the life and career of Reverend Wade Blank. The proclamation was sponsored by Council members Chris Hines and Sarah Parody, and Council approved the item unanimously. I now will move on, and I'd like to take a brief update and give you all a brief update of the conversations and potential timeline related to joint rail planning efforts in the Northwest Corridor. As you all will remember, we've received updates from representatives from the Colorado Executive Branch regarding joint passenger rail service, periodically going all the way back to September of 2024. Most recently, Diane Barrett was joined by representatives from HNTB and EY at our February meeting. They outlined the current modeling and cost projections for a 3-trip per day intercity passenger rail starter service from Denver to Fort Collins. As the board chair, I represent RTD alongside GMCO Johnson in ongoing joint service principal meetings, which have occurred since the February update and will continue to be scheduled as needed. Also participating in these meetings are the respective principals of the Front Range Passenger Rail District, Clean Transit Enterprise, Colorado Department of Transportation, as well as a representative from the Governor's Office. Another external entity report will be provided to this board during the May 28th board meeting. And again, that is a Wednesday. The intent of that presentation will be to share the work to date on the agreed-upon governance planning goals for joint rail services. Each of the various parties I mentioned earlier agreed that each board should understand what is being proposed prior to their respective boards and consideration and action, specifically the terms of both an intergovernmental agreement or an IGA and an intent to appropriate resolution regarding a joint rail service endeavor. The potential IGA, again, will be discussed in these coming months. Following the May 28th board meeting, there will be an external entity report in June, followed by potential action on the IGA and intent to appropriate resolution in July. I look forward to an extensive conversation on this at our May meeting and remain committed to providing you all with updates as the conversations amongst the principals continue. Finally, in my board report, I want to recognize a recent loss for the RTD community. Former RTD Director Bob Broom passed away earlier this month. Director Broom served on the board from 2017 through 2024. He was a thoughtful, insightful, and if you listen closely, very funny board member. He brought an immense wealth of experience in government and public finance to this board. Director Broom has a storied career with the City of Aurora, including service as a city manager and then city councilor. Following a standout career in municipal government, he launched a second career in public finance. To Director Broom's wife, Ruthie, and daughters, Lisa and Laura, my thoughts and prayers from the RTD community go out to you. With that being said, that is my report for this month. I thank you all. I will now give it over to GMCO Johnson for her report.
Sir, may I ask for a moment of personal privilege?
Of course, Director Risha.
Could we observe a moment of silence for Mr. Broom?
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Risha. Any further comments? Director Chandler.
I would just like to say that I now represent that same district, Bob Broom's district, District F. And I have known Bob for many years in the city of Aurora. And I just also want to give my respect to his family and to thank him, for his legacy and for allowing me to step into his shoes. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Chandler. Thank you, directors. Any further comments? Thank you. GMCO Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Bouquet, and good evening, board members and to all who are assembled, both here in this room and virtually. As introduced, I'm Deborah Johnson, RTD's General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. Before delving into my report, I am taking a moment to honor and recognize Director Broom. I echo your sentiments, Mr. Chair. Director Broom's insight, candor, and experience in municipal government, both in the realm of public finance and leadership, served him well in his 8 years as a member of this board of directors. I commend his lifelong dedication to public service and appreciate his unwavering support for public transportation. Before transitioning into my report, I will also provide information, as you indicated, related to an unfortunate incident that took place in the Denver Union Station underground bus concourse. I will be inviting Acting Chief Martin Gano momentarily to provide additional information regarding planned security enhancements for the area. As I shared with this body last night via email, at approximately 10 p.m., Monday, April 28th, RTD was notified by RTD's bus dispatch that a shooting occurred in the bus concourse at Denver Union Station. There was one victim struck by a bullet. RTD PD and security personnel responded to the exact location of the scene as RTD and security personnel were already on site at Denver Union Station. Emergency medical personnel responded and transported the victim to the hospital. RTD is not aware of the person's status at this time. One individual was taken into custody. Denver police secured the concourse. The facility was reopened for transit operations this morning at 4:46 a.m. at the beginning of revenue service. Bus operations, for everyone's edification, has contingency plans for numerous eventualities, including the plan that was enacted last night to preserve customer personal safety and security following the shooting. Under one such contingency plan, in the event of police activity or disruption in the bus concourse, buses are typically detoured to surface streets. Street supervisors are deployed in the concourse and at street level if it is safe to do so to direct customers. And it's important to specify that an on-site commander usually takes control of the situation, which in this instance could be Denver PD that's orchestrating what needs to happen in light of the very important aspect of public safety. And keeping this in mind, that was the case last night. Buses in service last night were also detoured to protect operators and customers on board at the time. All this said, every situation is different, and no contingency plan can account for every eventuality. Operations employees must remain vigilant and nimble to properly respond to each circumstance as rapidly as possible to ensure everyone remains as safe as possible. To accomplish this, bus operations personnel routinely coordinate with RTD PD and vice versa in the event of personal safety-related and other disruptive incidents. Only one bus dispatcher was on duty last night and was responsible for simultaneously managing a high volume of incoming calls and for communicating with multiple vehicles and street supervisors. Service alerts to report disruptions like the one that occurred last night are typically sent out within 30 minutes of the incident. The dispatcher on duty during this particular incident, who would have typically issued a service alert to notify customers and service detours, did not send the alert due to the extenuating circumstances outlined. I will now welcome Acting Chief Martin Gano to provide additional information. Chief?
Thank you, Chair, if I could.
Of course.
So, first of all, thank you. I'm very honored to be in this new role, and obviously I did not want to address the board within 24 hours for a situation like this. But hopefully, the leadership I give you today shows why I was chosen and answers a lot of your questions. The incident yesterday, like I said, is an ongoing investigation. I did reach out to our Denver Police Department partnership members to try to see if there's anything I could present to the board. It's a very complex situation, is what I've been told, and they are not comfortable at this time to make any type of public record. I do understand that, based off of conversations that, the news are giving different narratives, but I can tell you nothing that is being stated in the news has come from Denver PD or any member of the investigation team. I will state in regards to our officers, having them out there deployed and visible, they got there very, very quickly. They were able to secure the scene in minutes, and they did render first aid to the victim to allow her to be transported to the hospital. Again, we don't know the condition, but all that was done within minutes, which might have taken a lot longer, or maybe even hours, not having our police department and dedication and the visibility at Denver Union Station. So I will tell you also, our video investigations team is working very closely. They are providing camera footage, trying to understand, where this situation first started, how it came to our properties, and giving all the information to the Denver Police Department so they could make a collective investigation and come out with the true facts, hopefully here soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. So transitioning now to the content of my monthly report, I will share with you just a few highlights of activities and strategic endeavors since the most recent board meeting held on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. On Thursday, April 3rd, I, along with several RTD employees, attended a quarterly progress review meeting regarding the City and County of Denver's East Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Project currently underway. Representatives from Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, better known as DOTI, the Federal Transit Administration, as well as firms engaged in the project's construction and design, were also in attendance. Discussions ensued related to design and construction updates, scheduled milestones, material procurements, utility relocations, and several other critical components to bring this project to fruition. For anyone joining in tonight who may be unfamiliar, the BRT project includes new and enhanced transit stations, service amenities, and improved pedestrian and bike connections and placemaking opportunities. Construction, testing, and commissioning are anticipated to conclude in 2027, and upon completion, RTD will serve as the operator of the BRT service along this heavily utilized transit corridor. Jonathan Stewart from DOTI, who serves as the project's director, is scheduled to be in attendance, as you heard from Finance and Planning Chair Michael Guzman at May's Finance and Planning Committee meeting to give a presentation on this topic. As I was pleased to share with the board last week, on Tuesday, April 22nd, crews completed rail maintenance efforts that resulted in the full elimination of slow zone number 3, which previously impacted the H&R lines between Southmore, Bellevue, and Iliff stations. All speed restrictions along the R line have now been removed. To date, 28 of the 29 slow speed orders have been fully removed, and 3 of the 4 light rail zones have been successfully eliminated. In the coming month, which is May, the agency remains focused on lifting the remaining light rail speed restriction along the E&H lines between Colorado and Southmore stations, with the intent of lifting all remaining speed restrictions by the end of May. A less than 1 mile speed restriction remains in place on the southbound track between Yale and Southmore stations. On April 3rd, 2025, as I previously shared with this body via written communication that was transmitted electronically, 2 restrictions were added near the track switches to the north and southbound tracks near the Yale station. Once again, I appreciate customers' patience as these necessary state of good repair efforts have taken place over the last year. I would be remiss not to state that mechanical safety remains paramount at RTD. Should additional speed restrictions become necessary, customers can rest assured that the agency will not compromise when it comes to safety-related matters. And I want to acknowledge RTD staff throughout the organization who have leaned in to ensure they're doing their due diligence to maintain an operating environment that is mechanically sound. Crews are now working hard at work engaging in necessary state of good repair efforts along the A line between Denver International Station as well as Denver Union Station. This scheduled work, which includes rail maintenance and curved track replacement, commenced this past Saturday on April 26th and will continue through May 8th. During this time, rail vehicles will need to single track in both directions to allow crews to proceed with track surfacing between Denver Union Station and Den. Just want to qualify that throughout that alignment, we do have some areas of double track and there's single track. So where there's double tracking, we will be utilizing the single track as we do the rail maintenance. To ensure mechanical safety, rail vehicles will operate on a 30-minute headway, and bus shuttles will be deployed at designated times between 38th and Blake Station and 40th and Colorado Station, and between Denver International Airport and 61st and Pena stations. The service disruption page of the website, the NextRide app, service alerts, and station signage will all provide information regarding scheduled departure times and bus shuttle boarding locations for the duration. In support of the strategic priority of customer excellence, RTD has updated both its website and the NextRide trip planning tool to include 4 new translation languages, specifically French, Somali, Nepali, and Amharic. Prior to updating online resources, we have available in English, Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, Korean, and simplified Chinese. With the 4 language editions, RTD now offers 10 languages, increasing customer access to information. Related to employee ownership, this has already been stated, but I most definitely am proud to share with the board and with staff, as I did yesterday morning, following a nationwide search that resulted in 2 finalists being named, that Stephen Martingano has been selected to serve as RTD's Chief of Police and Emergency Management. Steve will officially assume the position on Tuesday, May 13th, following a swearing-in ceremony at Denver Union Station. The details of this event are forthcoming. Until May 13th, he will continue to serve as RTD's Acting Chief of Police and Emergency Management. I thank Acting Chief Martin Gano for his dedicated service to this agency over the last 10 years, and I personally look forward to our continued efforts for the betterment of RTD and those served. So once again, congratulations, Steve. If you want to join me in a round of applause. And with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, GMCO Johnson. And again, congratulations, Chief. Director Catlin.
Hi, some of you already know that, my husband and I were in the, bus, terminal last night. We were headed to the 952 W line when the shot rang out and we heard screaming and people started running. My husband did see the victim on the ground. I had already turned and started running. Needless to say, we were a little bit rattled. But I will say that kudos to Martin Gano and also DPD that the emergency response was just immediate. And I just wanted to say that that was just a very impressive reaction. And kudos to Chief Martin Gano. That it was really horrifying to hear the screams and the people running. But I think that what could have been mass chaos turned out to be a response that was better than I think any of us could have hoped. So I just wanted to let you all know that what you heard on the news was not exactly accurate with regard to timing or location, but I just did want to let you know that that I was present, and it's really a sad state of affairs that we had to experience that, especially since we've made such huge strides in improving our safety and security. That's all I have. Thank you. Oh, I also did want to say my condolences to Director Broom's family. I've known him for a good 20 years and have worked with him in many capacities, and I always admire his steadfast leadership and sage counsel and quick wit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Director Catlin. And yes, it was very troubling. I'm sorry that the two of you had to witness that and be part of that, but ultimately we're all happy that the two of you are safe. That's most important. Secretary Nicholson.
Thank you. First, I will echo what you just said about Director Catlin's safety and what you said earlier about former Director Broom. I have two questions for GMCO Johnson about the incident last night and our response to it. The first is, we've staffed up pretty significantly in the last couple of years when it's come to public safety. And I'm wondering, maybe you or Acting Chief Martin Gano can speak to the ways in which our response last night was able to be different than it would have been 5 years ago when we had 20 officers as opposed to the 100 something that we have today. How has that increase changed our ability to respond? And then the second question I want to ask is about the service alerts and our ability in emergency situations going forward to ensure that we deal with that.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Nicholson. I will start and I'll yield the floor to the acting chief. By way of background, as it relates to the difference relative to where we are. So a couple of things 5 years ago, we were in the midst of COVID. So quite naturally, we probably wouldn't have had that level of activity and the throughput relative to the ingress and egress within the bus concourse, just by virtue of what was happening and the orders that we adhere to by the Colorado Public Health and Environmental Department. And so with that as a backdrop, recognizing that we did have limited security personnel, what I will say 3 years ago, which would probably be a better analogy, We have static posts working in tandem with RTD, PD, and Acting Chief Martin Gano has been here leveraging the experience that we garnered through the American Public Transportation Association's peer review. When we talked about community policing, we recognize that we as a transit agency are interwoven into the fabrics of the communities that we serve. And so all of these behaviors that are less than optimal in and around transit facilities, recognizing that we have taken a community policing approach, we have static posts. Recognizing I live in lower downtown, we have RTD, PD that are situated at the Chestnut Pavilion, as well as having active security personnel, as well as RTD, PD actually canvassing the bus concourse. So that's the difference relative to the statements that I made earlier when indicated that bus dispatch reached out to RTD, PD. Basically, we have station starters, what we call station starters. They sit in the bus concourse. So there's cameras and eyes and ears. And so they notified RTD, PD. And within, moments, and the chief can speak more specifically to that, they were able to be on scene. Whereas 3 years ago, we more or less would have been relying on DPD to deploy sworn police personnel to the scene. So with that as my response, I'll tackle the next one, but I want to yield the floor to the acting chief. Thank you.
Chief Martin Nagano.
Chairman, yeah. One thing, everything is that our CEO said was accurate, and the only thing that needs to be addressed is training. Our officers are trained really, really well. Having our own police department, we're able to train them internally. And then obviously our growth, we have a lot of experienced officers. So a lot of the officers that were working last night have been officers at other municipalities. So as soon as they responded on that scene, they knew exactly what to do, how to secure it, how to render first aid. All that is continuing on the efforts, the continuous support that we have. We're one of the better trained agencies in the metropolitan area because, these situations don't happen every day, thank God. But when they do happen, we want to make sure muscle memory and our officers are ready for it. So I think that's been the biggest change from 5 years ago to today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Secretary Nicholson, you had questions relative to service alerts?
Yeah, basically just, I completely understood what you said about, we had an emergency situation in which getting the service alert out is less important than coordinating all of the buses and everything. Obviously, getting service alerts out is also very important. It's not as important perhaps, but it's something that we, even in an emergency, ideally would have the capacity to address. And I'm hoping, maybe you can maybe you can speak to like, recognizing we also are not made of money, how can we in the future, when something like this happens, because unfortunately it probably will somewhere, somehow, how can we make sure that we're prepared and able to provide those sorts of service alerts to our customers in those sorts of situations?
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for the question, Secretary Nicholson. So a couple of things. Considering that we are a transit agency, and like many, we do have a continuity of operations plan that is contingent upon the circumstances, as I talked about, relative to the eventualities in reference to what may occur. So there's a myriad of different aspects. One thing that's unique about Denver Union Station, considering that that is the agency's primary intermodal hub, whereby we have a concessionary agreement. And I broach that because we have a third-party entity as we talk about commuter rail. On the Chestnut Pavilion side, we have light rail, and then we have bus dispatch. This occurred after hours, which doesn't negate what you're asking, but I'm providing context before I address the question. And so quite naturally, as relates to bus dispatch, it was after hours. As relates to the circumstances there, it's generally fallen to bus dispatch due to the fact that that's more heavily staffed, and we have a greater number of buses coming through that time of night. And with that, relative to the service alerts, that would customarily fall there. So looking back, what we always do is do a hot wash so we can determine what might we capitalize on going forward. So as we talk about where we are considering the interdependencies with the different modalities, we are still one RTD. And so having conferred with staff for all intents and purposes, recognizing that we have certain staffing levels during the course of Monday through Friday service during specific hours, and recognizing less individuals that are available within customer care, looking at deploying those resources in a different fashion to have someone who may be able to be on call to disseminate that information going forward. While we are talking about RTD, when I was engaging in this topic, it's a similar situation that I've seen at other transit agencies as well, because while these incidents are far and few between, quite naturally, the impetus is on providing customers with information relative to service disruptions that generally come from a mechanical operational type of situation and not that of a public safety. So going forward, recognizing that there could be some template that could be leveraged from a pull-down menu whereby somebody who doesn't work within those auspices could generate some information relative to what one sees on a NextRide app or a website. But as we talk about what happened last evening, I do want to ensure that everybody understands with our stellar staff that we have within bus operations, that in that instance, there were individuals directing folks to buses on the ground, as opposed to not knowing what the service alert would have been outside of saying, due to an emergency situation, buses aren't servicing that area, but they were topically elsewhere within the perimeter of the greater Denver Union Station complex.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Secretary?
Yeah, I would just say that that makes perfect sense to me. And yeah, that in terms of putting people up there to direct the folks who were planning to go to the physical location is definitely probably the first priority. And hearing that you're already thinking about, how can we have that sort of, what's the term that we use? The an extra board individual, so to speak, who can sub in those circumstances. I'm joking. I'm using that as a metaphor, not an actual. I'm saying having someone who can sub in those circumstances and be able to handle getting those alerts out while bus operations is taking care of making sure the buses know where to go. That sounds like a really thoughtful solution, and I'm glad to hear. Please, just as you get more information about progress on that, and as you look into how to implement and operationalize that kind of solution, please keep me updated on what that looks like. And I'm sure the rest of the OS&S committee would probably be curious about it as well. So thank you. And I'll just say to Chief Martingano, I thought the response was fantastic. I think this is exactly what we need to be able to demonstrate to people that we're capable of. Catching the guy is incredible. It speaks to the value that having a real police force brings to this agency. So thank you very much for your team.
Thank you, Secretary. And I know GMCO Johnson will inform all of us when appropriate. Thank you. Dr. Guzman.
So Union Station is in my district, and I do not wish this to happen in anybody else's. Let me make that clear. None of us want to have to live through this. To the RTD-PD staff, thank you. First of all, thank you for helping to render aid in a situation that required it. Everything else after that is secondary. The human life was the most important thing. And so I am unfortunately at an impasse with how to proceed with service alerts, because I really don't care that service alerts didn't go out immediately. They went out when it was appropriate, because the human life at risk was the most important thing. And it is my district, so I get to say that. The second thing is, I really want to thank you for the partnership you have with Denver Police Department. And I hope that any help and aid that we can give them in the investigation, we do. It sounds like we are. And so I know that that is a commitment that you will uphold in the relationship that we have with the Denver Police Department. Detaining the aggressor because we had trained police professionals there, again, thank you. We have had a storied history with Denver Union Station, the Chestnut Pavilion for the last few years, and being able to look at this without constant worry all night long. I did sleep knowing that it was in good hands and will patiently wait until more information comes forward. But I would preface any future conversation with the board with just the expectation that we would like a little bit of follow-up on this when it is appropriate, whether that comes in partnership with DPD or not. And I will leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Guzman. I would just be cautious for us as directors to be conscientious of what words we're using in terms, especially with an ongoing investigation going on with the terms such as aggressor, or we got the guy. I just wanted to clarify, just be cautious of the words that are being used, because this is an ongoing investigation. So thank you. Director Rusha.
Thank you, sir. Aggressor or suspect? I just wanted to say I concur with everything that Director Guzman just said. I can wax poetic about rider alerts all day long. I do it often, especially in my district and the routes that I use. But we're talking about human life and rider alerts. This is my personal opinion. Are not even secondary, they're tertiary or further down the line in a situation like this. But with that being said, I do believe the OSS committee is to have an update from staff regarding real-time communications, which I think this does fall under. And I hope I'm not going outside of our rules, Mr. Chair, in addressing another director directly, but call me out of order. Director Catlin, I'm very sorry. You're up on the screen there. It's a really crappy club to belong in when you are in a situation and shots ring out or you see a victim on the floor. And so I just, I wanted to extend those feelings. And I also really appreciate how you showed up today and rightfully commended our staff and our acting chief and our response to the situation. So thank you. Sometimes, particularly when things are difficult and in the moment and require a high level of subject matter expertise, we don't say thank you enough. So thank you to all three directors who spoke on this matter for recognizing and appreciating staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Any further questions, comments for GMCO Johnson? Thank you very much for your report, and thank you, Chief. All right, we're going to go a little bit out of order here. I am told that former Director Tisdale is online and would wish to share some words regarding former Director Broom. So, Director Tisdale, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Director Tisdale, looks like we just lost you.
I'm here. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate the opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate the incredible relationship that I enjoyed with Director Bob Broom through our 8 years on the board together. As you know, Director Broom and Director Kate Williams and I were elected in 2016, joined the board in 2017, and served 8 happy years together. And Director Broom was always a source of insight, patience, civility, gentlemanliness, and very careful analysis of all of the issues, particularly the financial issues, which is why he was always on our boards for our pension funds, because he understood that more than most people. He was a source of inspiration to all of us, and he was an incredibly welcoming, genial, and humorous in his own quiet way director. And I appreciate the opportunity to share these words. I'm sorry that I was occupied earlier with other matters and could not be a part of the comments that were given in tribute to Bob Broom. But I want to say to all of you who did not have the pleasure and the privilege of knowing Bob Broom that he was a phenomenal public servant and a man whose memory will live on long after because of his civility, his gentility, his kindness, and his knowledge. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to share these words.
Of course. Thank you very much, former Director Tisdale. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for those kind words for former Director Bob Broom. Moving on, our next item is for unanimous consent items. There are 5 items on the unanimous consent agenda item listed under Section 15, Actions A through E. Those items are for the 2025 Fiscal Policy, 2021 to 2026 Strategic Plan Official Visit, the 2025 State Lobbying Services, the resolution supporting pilot program for records request fee waivers serving a public purpose, and then finally, the bylaw amendments regarding director accountability. If anyone has a change to, discussion on, or question about any of the remaining unanimous consent items, please feel free to advise the chair, myself, at this time, and will of course be happy to pull the item from unanimous consent for consideration under recommended action. Director Guzman, which item would you like to pull?
Can we please pull item A for a quick amendment? It's 3 words. We'll get it done quickly, I promise.
Excellent. Item A will be pulled. Director or Treasurer Banker.
I would also like to pull the strategic plan.
Item B. Director Ruscio.
Well, I was gonna ask for, sorry, the numbers, the letters just changed, the last 2. So the public records, and then the bylaw, just, I know I don't have to explain, but just on the basis that sometimes we have things, even if they go through executive, to come back to the board, just so that we're all on the same page.
Sure. Item D and E have been pulled. Anyone want to pull A? Oh, I'm sorry. Originally item C. My apologies. All right, so those items have been pulled. So to approve then, our 2025 state lobbying services, do I have a mover on that?
So moved.
I have Whitmore as the mover.
Second?
Ruscio is the second. Any discussion on that? Yeah. Oh, it's a unanimous, yeah. So, call for the vote. Any no votes on it? Okay, seeing none, passes 14-1. Okay, now we're moving on to what will be recommended action, which will be, the first one will be the 2025 physical policy. And this is for the board of directors to approve the modified 2025 physical policy. Fiscal, sorry, my fiscal.
I'm not that out of shape, Julian. I know you're a
Physical,
teacher.
if you guys want to do that. Fiscal. Do I have a mover on that?
So moved.
Guzman, second.
Second.
And Banker, discussion? Director Guzman.
Quick amendment. Board members, packet page 31 of the fiscal policy for 2025. I would move to amend item number 6 under expenditure policies to read as follows. RTD will provide transit services in accordance with Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act requirements and agency guidelines, period. Add 3 words at the end, that's it.
Excellent. And do we have a second on that amendment?
Second.
Whitmore is a second. Any discussion on that amendment?
Yeah.
Secretary?
Director Guzman, can you explain the point of the amendment and what it does?
Yes, we have to follow the law. but we also have other guidelines in different policies that we also need to be responsible to adhere to that are RTD, to make sure that we are providing public service under our statutory enactment. We're to provide transit to the population in the regions we represent in the RTD. And so there may be guidelines, there are guidelines that will be, that we need to adhere to in providing that service that go along with this. And in terms of expenditure, we need to follow those guidelines as well, not just Title VI, but also our guidelines as a board that we have available to us.
Secretary?
Can you just give me an example of like what the, being new to the board, I'm not as familiar with every piece of RTD, and maybe this is a question for GMCO Johnson, but what would it be an example of those guidelines?
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, yes.
So, for example, this board adopted in 2016, like their service standards and their service policies. Keeping in mind that we have been having ongoing discussions as it relates to,
Appreciate it.
I use this air quotes, legacy users of paratransit, for instance, right? It's within this body's purview to discern what might also be applicable. And so those are examples that I would offer up, and not to mention as we look at a comprehensive operational assessment going forward, as we make decisions relative to how service is deployed, there could be certain elements that this body takes into consideration. For instance, if you weren't generating a certain boarding per revenue hour, that's an agency guideline. So really it's from the service standard monitoring aspect. This body adopted a resolution for all intents and purposes last month, whereby the staff and I are bringing forward to this body for its consideration slight revisions to the service standards, keeping in mind that when we do the triennial comprehensive operational analysis, that will inform the service standards going forward. So that would be the information relative to the agency guidance.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Director Kuzma.
I would also add to that, we set goals at the beginning of this year, and sometimes those are guidelines that we have set for the general manager CEO. So expenditures should not be tied to only Title VI requirements, which we are legally responsible to do anyway, but also to the guidelines that we have set forth as a board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Risha.
Thank you, sir. I think this has been said, but just for other directors who maybe didn't previously sit on F&P or are new to the board, this actually tracks with previous fiscal policy language that we had before. I can't speak for drafters, but it's just possible, as we move through the years and made a lot of changes, that this type of language fell off. But I did want to emphasize that this covers current board policy, so it's harmonizing the two. I hope that helps provide the
Thank you, Director.
context.
Thank you. Secretary?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Thank you very much. Sounds great.
Okay, any further discussion on our fiscal policy, not physical policy? This will be my George W. Bush nuclear moment, so I'll embrace it. Are there any no votes on this? Okay. So I have, so passes 14-0-1.
And then make sure you return to the main motion to vote.
So as
now
a-
that you've amended it.
And then the main motion to actually pass it as amended. Any no votes on that? And that'll also pass 14-0 and 0 being no votes and 1 being absent. Okay, moving on. Moving on to our strategic, next item is the 2021-2026 strategic plan official version. Do I have a mover on this?
I'd like to move and also have a discussion.
Banker is the mover
Second.
and O'Keefe is the second. And discussion, Director, Treasurer Banker.
Thank you. I went through the revised strategic plan for 2021, 2026, went through it. And I guess what surprised me the most, first of all, let me tell you, it was very well put together, easy to read, and I'm very pleased that we have discussion and photos of our employees and their buy-in. I think that's very important. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when I take a look at the strategy pyramid and I take a look at our vision, mission, values, I don't see too much about transit. And so I decided to take a quick look, very quick look at some of the other transit agencies. For example, our mission statement is we make lives better through connections. MARTA says to advocate for and provide safe multimodal transit services that advance prosperity, connectivity, and equity for a more livable region. And I went and I took a look at a couple of others. This particular strategic plan is going to be expiring sometime next year, mid next year. And we have nothing in here about increasing ridership or restoring services to pre-pandemic levels. And so I wanted to at least point that out to our directors that there, in my opinion, there's quite a bit that's missing in this strategic plan. Since we're going to be having a retreat in the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, that we can talk about some of our goals and strategies and start thinking about where we want to take this agency in the next year or 2 years. It's also, this particular plan strikes me as being a bit outdated, and perhaps we can even get a jump start on rewriting a new one. And I'm hoping that the directors here would be involved, or staff would be involved, and we make it pretty rigorous. And with also, I would like to see some specific goals, numbers, dates, et cetera. Most of this is, or I should say much of this is based on customer surveys or employee surveys. I would like to have a lot of our goals to be measured so that we know whether or not we attain them or not. That is the only reason I pulled this. I just thought our strategic plan is an important document. And I think I get a sense, of course, we won't know until the whole board chimes in for a full discussion, but I get a sense that we may want to make it a little bit more rigorous and get moving on it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Treasurer Banker. Can't make any promises, but I think it is worthy of a discussion going into the future of what input the board has specifically with these final years of the 2026 strategic plan, and of course, what we transition to. Because we have to remember of how much the world has changed when this was first introduced.
True.
And what feedback we want to add to it. So I appreciate this discussion. Secretary.
Thank you. I actually just, so first off, echoing everything that Director Banker said, I'm very excited about having joined the board at a time when we get to be the people that rewrite this. I think it's a real special opportunity. But I will say this, one thing that I've heard throughout the last year when I was running, talking to people in the transit advocacy community over and over and over again, is for any criticisms people have about where we are at with the strategic plan now, you should have read it when it was first written. The thing that I have heard over and over and over again is how much better this strategic plan is from the one that was originally drafted, and the improvements and the thought that's gone into it from the board members over the last 3 or 4 years who really have pushed to make the existing strategic plan as much as possible meet the moment that we've been in. And I'd be remiss not to mention that I've heard again from like 6 or 7 different people during the course of campaigning. And so I think that really deserves a certain amount of respect for how much work was put into it after it was drafted to make it better.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah, Director Guzman.
So as chair of the Finance and Planning Committee with my vice chair, Karen Banker, I also want to bring to your attention that on our work plan, we do have the beginning of the comprehensive operational analysis, which will inform and should inform with data, information, et cetera, strategic goals, which are the overarching long-term goals of the agency for at least the next 10 years that will be commencing later this year. We are going to receive some updates from you, Madam General Manager and CEO, correct? It's on our work plan to be able to do that work, to be able to get this going. And so it is an exciting time to be on there, but there's a lot of detail and research that needs to be done. I think we will achieve that end, but all in good time. We just need to, I think, wrap this up and be done with 2026's plan to be able to transition into the newer plan. And so we definitely have that on the work plans already, prepared and anticipating doing this work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dr. Maker, or sorry, Director Chandler, I'm off today.
That's okay. I too want to echo what Director Banker said. I really appreciate her looking forward to that, specifically at all of the additional mission and vision. I would also like to mention maybe additional emphasis on the taxpayer in general and also stakeholders as well. There are a lot of stakeholders that were not really addressed, and I think that's an important something to talk about as well in the strategic plan. So I just want to mention that and put it in the back of everyone's mind to think about in the future.
Thank you, Director Chandler. Director Ruscia?
Thank you, sir. I just have, well, maybe a clarifying question. Is that okay? And someone can correct me if I am wrong, but my understanding is that the 2022 plan predates the last two board elections. Adjustments to that have been made primarily regarding our scoring process. And what we have here is a new strategic plan. I don't want to ask a leading question, so I apologize because I'm going to give my thoughts. I did feel it was a little slimmed down from the previous version, and I had concerns. I would feel more comfortable if someone, whether it be GM CEO Johnson or Chair Performance or you, Mr. Chair of the board, to just explain how are we going to do strategic planning moving forward, just recognizing that that 2022 document was also a collective process with a prior board. And then I would be okay voting yes if I understood where we're going.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Ruscia, for the comment and all of you all's comments. I don't disagree. So just by way of background, when I came into this organization after doing a myriad of stakeholder engagements with elected officials from multiple jurisdictions, engagement with union representation, with the board itself, with employees, it seems as if we did not have a clear-cut direction relative to having a North Star. We did not have a strategic plan in place. Considering that I came into the organization in November of 2020, wanted to ensure that we could rally around and have an understanding of the direction in which we were going. Unbeknownst to me at the time, didn't realize that we didn't have a lot of baseline metrics and things of the like. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, we went down the path with establishing baseline information. I provide that as context because there were multiple levels of the organization that were involved, including the board, as we talked about, you know, what the mission is. And as we all know, it's what we do, and the vision is where we aspire to be. And while I recognize that the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority may talk about their intent, this was our intent at the time, relative to saying that we make lives better through connections, due to the fact that a myriad of people said that RTD was known as the agency of no. We didn't engage with individuals, so it was reflective of what was happening at the time. And that's not to debate the issue, I'm just saying the point in time. And so keeping that top of mind, we engaged with a third-party consultancy where we did a solicitation, had several proposals that were submitted, had board retreats and things of the like going forward. As we talked about what the mission would be and the vision would be, there was input from the board as we talked about our vision statement to be the trusted leader that gets back to the agency of no and people trusting what we're doing, to provide value, i.e. what's the value that we bring with having a taxpayer-paid transit organization, at least 70%, to provide value and excellence to the customers and community. So that's how that germinated. And so with that going forward, recognizing that it is staff's intent of working with the board as we did previously, ensuring that there is a third-party consultancy that could help bring this full circle if that's this board's desire, but recognizing that this does expire, air quote, in 2026. It would be a collective effort to have discussions about what that path would be going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Director Ruscia?
Thank you. That satisfies my question.
Yeah, I just want to put emphasis on it, and, you know, Performance Chair Guzman, if you wanted to add on to, the key term is collaborative process between staff and the board of directors, which we had previously. But of course, going forward after, again, the expiration of this 2026. So thank you for your comments. Director Pagliari.
Thank you. This is Director Pagliari. I just want to say thank you, Director Banker. I agree with you, and I look forward to collaborating with you and the other members of this board in drafting the plan after this one. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Committee Chair.
You said it, collaboration. We will communicate about this, but I think it's very clear we want to have some good information to be able to make decisions based off. We have baselines now, which we did not have before, and we will continue to grade on that scale. We'll work together to figure out what that looks like.
Thank you. And again, the collaboration process continues forward, as one of our board goals this year was to be more present with our stakeholders, track with our stakeholders, get that input as elected officials. And again, collaboration with not only the board, who is, in theory, the voice of the people who put us to these positions, collaboration with the staff, but of course, collaboration with our stakeholders. So looking forward to the process. Any further comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I believe I had Director Banker and Director O'Keefe as the I'm sorry, are we good online? Okay. I'll keep speaking then. We're still going. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. So I have Director Banker as the mover and Director O'Keefe as the second. Do we have any no votes? And again, this is for the board of directors to approve the attached document as the current official version of the 2021-2026 strategic plan, which incorporates revisions to the plan previously adopted by the board in June and October of 2024. Are there any no votes on this item? Oh, Mr. Kroll, I'm sorry.
I'll just note that Director Harwick had to step away. He'll let me know when he's back. So when you record the official vote, we'll just note him as away.
Excellent, thank you. Any no votes? Okay, we'll see that pass 13-0, 2 absent. Excellent, thank you all. Okay, moving on. We're now on our next action item, which is the resolution supporting pilot program for a records request fee waiver serving a public purpose for the board of directors to adopt the attached resolution in the board packet, creating a pilot program to provide Cora CCJRA request fee waivers for set number of requests serving a public purpose. Do we have a mover?
So moved.
I have Nicholson as the mover.
Second.
I have Chandler as a second. Any discussion on this? Secretary.
Thank you.
I got Bruce.
Every time you tear a leaf off a calendar, you present a new place for new ideas and progress. That was GM CEO Johnson's quote in RTD's January 8th Inside Connections email, and I think it's fitting today. I returned to you after a month with a new idea, one that came directly from staff and represents real progress over what was presented last month. I want to be clear, this proposal is not a compromise, it's better. Staff came to me with an approach that was more aligned with our values and more grounded in existing law, and after reviewing it, I agreed. That's why this resolution provides 1 additional hour of free records processing time for every request that serves a public purpose. This resolution is no longer about the person, but rather the requests they're making. The reason this ties the waiver to a public purpose is simple. That's exactly what the Cora statute allows us to do. For decades, it has said, quote, such fee may be reduced or waived by the custodian if the electronic services and products are to be used for a public purpose, including public agency program support, nonprofit activities, journalism, and academic research. Fee reductions and waivers shall be uniformly applied among persons who are similarly situated. We determine public purpose in this resolution with self-attestation, presenting each requester with an explanation of the waiver and asking them to affirm that their request serves a public purpose. All this resolution really does there we go. 2/3 of all paid requests last year would have been fully covered by this policy. And those requests weren't abstract. They came from researchers, journalists, and everyday people trying to recover video of accidents, locate stolen vehicles, or understand public safety incidents that directly affected their lives. These were people seeking answers. So tonight I'm asking you to say yes to something that's simple and fair. When someone makes a records request that serves the public good, unnecessary fees shouldn't be a barrier. This is about removing barriers to access, barriers that fall hardest on people without institutional resources or personal wealth. It's about recognizing that public records exist to be used, and that when they're used for a public purpose, it strengthens trust, improves outcomes, and serves all of us. I want to thank Directors Geisinger, Chandler, and Ruscha for their thoughtful engagement and for helping shape this into a resolution that better reflects the needs of the public that we serve. Their input made this proposal stronger. This resolution is a modest but meaningful step forward. It makes us more open as an agency and reduces the public's burden in accessing information that already belongs to them. I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you, Secretary. Director Ruscha?
Thank you, sir. Is it okay if I address the mover? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Nicholson, for your kind words. I'm asking, sorry, as I wasn't involved in the final iterations of this, I do have some clarifying questions, and I hope you can help me out. So before I say that, thank you also for including academics. You know, I was pushing hard for that one last month, so that did warm my heart. So we have in 1B, where we talk about 170 public purpose requests per calendar year, does that mean one entity can make multiple requests, or are those 170 separate entities? That's my first question.
Secretary?
So yes, the way that this is structured now is basically it's done on a per request level, not on a per individual level, because that's how we currently process our records requests. What that does is it alleviates the burden on staff of having to track participation and usage by individual. And it literally just comes down to, okay, here's a records request. This records request serves a public purpose. Okay, it qualifies for 2 hours of free staff time instead of 1 hour for free staff time. The reason for the 170 cap is that the original resolution and this resolution are both intended to be financially capped to ensure that there's not some kind of crazy, we get 10,000 requests burden on staff. So 170 requests at the $30 an hour we currently charge is a little over $5,000 a year. So it's the same cap of about $5,000 in total cost, essentially, that we'd be waiving, assuming all 170 are used. We did not have 170 paid requests last year, so presumably we would actually, if assuming requests don't change, I wouldn't even expect us to hit that 170 simply because we didn't have 170 requests last year that would have qualified for even would have required a second hour.
Director Ruscha?
That was I think you answered several questions there, sir. I had one, but thank you. I would note, though, that according to the data that the district released to us, we did have far more than 170 requests, but perhaps you were referring to just the ones coming from the press. I don't want to speak for you, but we had well over 170. We almost hit 1,000.
Secretary?
We had about 150 requests that were over 1 hour and required a fee payment. So we had about 140, 150 paid requests this year. It was a little bit less in 2023. We had, you're right, many more that didn't require, that were within the 1 hour and didn't require any kind of fee payment.
And then perhaps
Director Ruscha?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, all right. Director Ruscha?
Thank you, sir. I have a question for General Counsel, if that's okay, or whomever. I just presume because this is under your department. So when we get a request from, say, a local law enforcement agency, we don't. I'm just clarifying. We do not currently charge for those requests, correct? Thank you.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes, thank you, Director Ruscha, for the question. So you're correct. When our video investigations team receives a request for a video from local law enforcement, we are not charging them.
Director Ruscha?
Thank you. That might have been when I was looking at the data where I had such a high number because those types of requests were also included. And then I guess I don't, to whomever can answer this. I believe Secretary Nicholson did give the answer, but I just want to make sure I understood. Also, Cart was skipping a little bit, so please be gracious with me. So I hope this does not happen, but theoretically, one organization, be it a transit advocacy organization, an RNO, an academic, an individual, if they state this is for a public purpose, they could put in dozens of requests and potentially qualify for the additional subsidy. And then I guess the second part is, and this is per calendar year, so then once that 170 is hit, when it's reached, it's just reached. That was a difference from last time. Thanks.
Secretary?
Yeah, I'll take the second question first. Yes, it's 170, starts in January. When it's used up, it's used up. And to the first part, we actually have fairly good data on how many requests are coming from any one organization or one requester. And at least so far, there's, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but when I was doing this, looking at this data, there isn't currently any requester making more than 20, I think 30 requests is about as high as it gets. And most of those requests are handled within 1 hour. So yes, there's a possibility that as a result of this, you suddenly get requesters asking for requests that end up being exactly 2 hours and they don't have to pay more. But at least my expectation is we'll get similar types of requests to what we get right now, maybe a few more. Most of those requests will be under an hour and we'll, be satisfied with the existing exemptions in Cora. Some of them will qualify for this, but you'd have to be pretty precise to try to suddenly start making a lot of exactly 2 hour requests. And I understand the concern that you raised, that it was something that I considered, but at the end of the day, we just don't have that level of disproportionate number of requests from like one organization to make me think that that's a significant concern. Now this sunsets, I should add one more thing. This sunsets in 26. This is done unless we do something in 2026 to renew it. So there'll be an opportunity for us to look at it and be like, wow, that didn't work exactly the way we expected. Maybe we need to make some changes to it. Maybe we need to put a cap on individual, whatever it is. But I feel like the fewer of those types of constraints, the easier it's going to be for staff, certainly, because they're not going to have to track that kind of thing. And also the less we have to play games or worry about, oh, we're unfairly burdening this organization or that, let's give it, time, see how it works out, and then, adapt to try to maybe, address those sorts of concerns if they come along.
Thank you, Secretary. And following with our board operating guidelines, I'm going to go to our next speaker and then come back around. Our next question from First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Comment, not question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Nicholson, Secretary Nicholson raised this as an idea during his campaign, and as a step towards some more transparency and openness with the agency. I wanted to congratulate him on getting this idea across the line and pick up some support along the way to make it better. My district is covered by a bunch of small newspapers like some of you, and this option for them in particular makes a difference on whether or not they're writing a story or not. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Director Chandler.
I too echo that, Director O'Keefe, and I would also like to reiterate the fact that it does have a sunset provision, which I really appreciate because we can do some significant evaluation and see if we can make it even better or if it is doing what we intended it to do. So I appreciate that there is an opportunity for that revisitation and evaluation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Chandler. Director Guzman.
I have two questions. How does this support sustain improve transportation in RTD.
Secretary?
Is there a second
I-
question? Or you want me to do that one first and then, okay.
I'm assuming you're addressing the questions of the secretary. All right, Secretary Nicholson.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, the idea behind this at the end of the day is that the better people can understand the work that we do, the better that they can get answers to the questions they have about how RTD operates, the more that we will inspire trust in the community and the more that we will be able to address and surface concerns that individual customers may have, something that they experienced and then can get records for and then can raise to us. You know, it's a much more powerful thing to have someone, a constituent, come to the board or to the press and say, hey, this happened to me and here's the video. Or, you know, this happened to my friend or this happened in my community. You know, this issue of why RTD is addressing or not addressing this Title VI concern. Well, here are all the emails of directors talking about Title VI and their positions on it. And so here's what we're going to talk about. I think those opportunities to dig in to the choices that we're making and how we are making them. One of the things that I've learned is, you know, we have a lot of back and forth over email about the decisions that get made in these board meetings one-on-one. Those don't get surfaced unless someone wants to see them and unless someone makes requests to see them. And the more expensive that is, the harder it's going to be to get that date, you know, get that information and then be able to make noise about it. So I think that, you know, that ability to empower the people of this district, you know, of all of our districts, to be effective advocates for the change that they want to see. I think that's absolutely what engages, especially communities that are underrepresented. You know, people with power have ways to make their voices heard. People without power often have the most difficulty, you know, raising the issues they care about and gaining traction. So, you know, I see Cora generally as an opportunity to empower those communities.
Thank you, Secretary. Director Guzman?
My second question, coming from the performance space, how does this help to meet our 2025 short-term goals with the CEO that this board owns or our board short-term goals?
Secretary?
Great question. I think that, you know, when you look at what those goals are, when it comes to, you know, improving security, when it comes to increasing ridership, when it comes to increasing on-time percentage, you know, if someone is facing an issue where it comes to, you know, why is my bus not on time? Why are buses in my neighborhood not on time? You know, and they want to ask the question, you know, okay, you know, has there been any conversations about this? What data can I get in terms of our scheduling, in terms of, you know, our planning, whatever it is, to understand, you know, how we're making decisions that impact on-time percentage, that impact, you know, service availability, whether we're paying attention to different concerns at all. I think that, you know, I mean, we have organizations in the community that dig in extensively into these questions. And if you look at the records requests that we get that ask specific questions about our, you know, our operations, their ability to get those records without having to shell out 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, whatever, and be able to poke at us and say, hey, well, what about this? What about that information? I'll tell you, as a board member, I'm not going and digging into that data on a daily basis. I am not looking at our run board. I am not looking at our GTFS. You know, there's all kinds of information I'm not looking into. And so enabling the public to be the guy that is poking into that stuff and saying, hey, pay attention to this, I think does facilitate us doing a better job addressing, you know, those sorts of concerns. And when it comes to, you know, safety and security rather, you know, being able to get information, video on the incidents that we're having and raise concerns about, oh, RTD did this well, or we did that poorly, or whatever. You know, I just think it empowers the public to be an effective addition to the oversight that we are already doing and trying to do, you know, on these questions. And I'm a big believer in the ability of the public, when you empower them, to be effective advocates on those sorts of
Thank
questions.
you, Secretary. Appreciate it. Director Ruscia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not trying to hog the air in the room here. I am I'm trying to ask direct questions and get more direct answers. So, on in this resolution, which is, again, it's changed a bit from last time. And just so there is no misunderstanding, I was working on this last year, so I wholly support the principle of this. I want to understand what I'm voting on, right? So we have, it says that effective July 2025, we also talk about a calendar year. So does that mean for this, for like the next 6 months, there is 170 subsidized hours for the rest of this year, excuse me?
Yes.
Okay, so get your requests in, because, all right, I just want to make sure. Oops, sorry, Mr. Chair, is it okay
You
if I
guys are fine.
directly dialogue?
Yep. I do want to, we're hitting pretty close to
I-
the mark of discussion time on this, so continue to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am trying to address direct questions. Okay, I did have a comment and then question and then I'm done. So yes, when we lower the price, more people are going to inquire. More people will want the product, so to speak. That was the economic argument that both myself and Secretary Nicholson made last month. So I don't think someone's going to do the math and try to just hit 2 hours. We're talking about a subsidy. We already give. We're going well beyond what is required of law in the interest of the public good. So I like that. I mean, this is in the interest of the public good. What I'm trying to figure out is, again, how we got from A to B on these versions. And so the one thing that was put into the last version, which I understood to be on staff's request, but I could have been mistaken, was some language regarding like a report to the board on the types of requests we were getting in the event that we had to make adjustments to this policy before the end of the sunset. And I was wondering, Secretary Nicholson, if you could address why that is not part of this proposal, or maybe staff could address that's not a concern. I don't know who to ask.
Secretary?
Yeah. So I would just
You
say.
could make your comments brief.
I will try. I have one closing comment after this, but then, yeah. Anyway, just in consultations with staff and with some of the other individuals and stakeholders, I think, because of the nature of the requests, being a 1 hour thing instead of being this big, specific to certain organizations and specific, that those sorts of concerns become, less sizable. And, we can always make the requests in next year for the types of reports that we feel like we need in order to provide proper oversight. But the sense that I got was just, if we don't have to ask for it, we're going to be better off, taking a fresh eye to this in 2026 and making the requests that we need at that point.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right, any further questions or comments? Secretary, you have a minute.
I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to point out that I failed to mention this in my initial remarks. RTD is at the leading edge right now of our compliance on CORA. The staff that we have with CORA, both with our public, Stuart, with Melanie's team, really do try to answer these requests, to do them in the least amount of time possible, to charge people a reasonable fee. We charge less than the statutory maximum. And I just wanted to make the very clear case that, we're already doing better than a lot of agencies. We take credit cards. Like, this is a step ahead for a team that is doing it right. This is not bringing us up to, to par. And I just want to commend the agency for all that they do in support of access to public records already, because I think it's important to highlight that. Thank you.
Right at a minute. Thank you, sir. I'm going to take a roll call vote on this. Treasurer Banker,
Yes.
Director Busick is absent. Director Catlin,
I'm sorry, I had my hand raised and I
oh,
did.
my apologies. I am so sorry, Director Catlin.
Oh, I just, from a perception standpoint, I appreciate all of the items that Secretary Nicholson has posed, but recently the governor vetoed a bill of the same subject that was brought forth by the state legislature. And I know that there are very different components of our particular policy resolution versus what the state legislature had posed, but from a perception standpoint, I would just like it to be very clear. And you summarized it well, Secretary Nicholson, about how we were already complying and this is just a step further. But I just want to make sure that we're clear on the communication about the difference in our policy versus what the state legislature had posed that the governor vetoed. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Catlin.
And if you're still on the roll call vote, sorry to misspeak, I will be a cautious yes, knowing that we can follow up on it next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Director Chandler,
Yes.
Director Geisinger,
Yes.
Director Guccianator,
Yes.
Director Guzman,
No.
Director Harwick,
No.
Director Larson,
Yes.
Secretary Nicholson,
Yes.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe,
Yes.
Director Pagliari,
Yes.
Director Rusha.
Are we allowed to pass so I can think about it a few more seconds? I don't know if we're allowed to.
Director Rusha.
Do I have to make a vote right now? Mr. Chair, we're not supposed to make comments while we vote. I am a cautious yes for the students and the academics, and I.
Thank you, Director. Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
No.
I'm a yes. It'll pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 yes, 3 no, and 1 absent. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Okay, moving on. We do. All right, we're going to do a 10-minute break for our folks on CART. We'll be back at 7:35.
Hi, all. This is just a quick time check. We're at 7:35 already.
All right, folks, we are coming on back. Appreciate you all. All right. All right, thank you very much. We are now moving on to our next recommended action, and that is the bylaw amendments regarding director accountability. For the Board of Directors to adopt the proposed bylaw amendments, which detail the grounds, process, and accountability measures the board may take to hold directors accountable. Do we have a mover?
So moved.
O'Keefe as the mover and Catlin as the second. I heard Catlin online. Thank you. What discussion, if any, concerns or questions? Director Chandler.
First of all, I would like to thank you so much for taking in consideration some of the additions that I had passed along. They were very well received, and I'm excited that the committee passed it unanimously. So I just want to commend everyone for working hard on these bylaw changes.
Thank you very much, Director Chandler. Any further comments or questions? Director Risha.
Thank you, sir. So typically when if we have a resolution or bylaws change, legal change, whatever, it is not backdated. It's from this day forward. And I just wanted to get your understanding if that is the intent of this bylaw amendment. So it would be effective upon passage if it passes, and then it is moving forward, meaning someone could not bring a complaint from something that happened, say, last year or prior years.
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, my interpretation has always been this is kind of a two-step process. So one, we addressed it when we came forward with our board operating guidelines of, hey, these are the proper procedures that we want to kind of go forward with as a board. And obviously we passed that. So when it comes down to the disciplinary process itself, I interpret it as being during my time specifically as chair, if there's any issues, excuse me, I shouldn't say specifically my time. My time as chair after the board operating guidelines were passed. If during that time there is any, directors that they felt like there's violations of that, then, there could be potentially a complaint. And then obviously from this day forward, when it comes to the bylaw changes, the accountability would take effect if it passes tonight.
If I may, sir?
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for providing that honesty and clarification on the intent. I believe, and I apologize because if I'm getting different versions mixed up, so you can correct me, but I believe this most recent version also covers our code of ethics, which predates the board operating guidelines. And so that was also, that's also some additional context in my question. I guess my question is my concern. I'm not aware of any resolution or bylaw or even in parliamentary procedure where we pass something that is retroactive. I know we're not the state legislature, but in the legislature, we wouldn't be permitted to do that. So that, I guess that, thank you for answering my question honestly, but that's my concern, that it would be from this day forward. And then I also had another comment, but if there are other directors, then I will yield because I took a bite at the apple.
Absolutely. Ms. Snyder? I have some comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that everyone's aligned with the questions that are being asked. I'm interpreting what Director Rusha is asking about whether the bylaw amendments would apply to conduct prior to the passage of the bylaw amendments. And my understanding is that they would. The issue is that the bylaw amendments, the effective date would be just the procedure that is being adopted. So the empowering the chair and the procedure to overturn the chair's direction. But I think that's a really important conversation to have because I had the opposite interpretation of what Director Rusha was suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to make some comments. And again, what the changes being proposed, specifically I wanted to highlight in section 3 of Article 8 is the disciplinary process. And the chair of the board will issue a written notice of violation, including documentation of each instance in which, in the chair's judgment, the director is subject to discipline as outlined in Article 8, Section 2, to any board members who conduct meets the grounds for discipline. Any director who receives written notice of violations will be afforded 7 days to provide a written response to the notice. Written notice is considered provided on the date stamped on the email, which transmits written notice of the violations made to the subject director. After receiving and considering the response, if one is provided within the state timeline, the chair may act to discipline the director in accordance with Article 8, Section 4, with such discipline taking effect at the discretion of the chair. So again, it's the interpretation that the specific thing that we're changing right here is, the disciplinary process itself. It doesn't really, address saying, is this retroactive or not? It's good feedback, it's a good discussion to have itself. So, but the question is the board members whose conduct meets the grounds for discipline. Yeah, Director Rusha, yeah.
If you could just speak plainly, so this is retroactive from the time that the director attained their position? I mean, just, what's the date?
The 29th?
No, sir.
I'm giving you a hard time.
General Counsel Snyder, I feel like expressed my concern better than I did, but I'm asking, I guess I want clarification on what I'm voting on. So does this mean conduct from which date? The date at which the director was elected? Is it prior to their election? Is it when we passed the code of ethics or the last board operating guidelines? I just would like to know what date this, yeah.
My interpretation has always been when we pass the last operating guidelines. The changes to the operating guidelines. So it would be retroactive.
It would.
Yeah. Director Geisinger?
That doesn't sound like what our council said, and I guess that's not what I was understanding. Wasn't that just a month ago?
Mm-hmm. It really could be retroactive. It's open to interpretation, but it could be
I'm not
retroactive.
sure that's retroactive. I mean, we're talking about conduct, and I'm not sure that that's what retroactive means. Maybe Ms. Snyder can address that.
So I guess, ultimately it would be since a director's been sworn in, correct, Ms. Snyder?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're only talking about conduct that a director engages in. So that means as in your capacity as a director. I don't think we're going back to prior to when you're a director and when you were elected. And then what I'm saying, the effective date, unless you all change this or add some clarifying language, the effective date for the procedure for disciplining a director is effective upon passage. It could apply to conduct that occurred prior to the date that you adopt.
That would be my understanding. as
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Director Rusha.
Okay, so then this is not expressly outlined in the bylaw itself. So I would just like to, I'm hearing different things. Is it the date at any conduct from the date that any director was sworn in? Is that the date? Any conduct? I just wanted to know.
Yes, yes.
Is that what
since-
it is? Okay.
Yes, since the director's been sworn as I've been serving as a director, so.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't know if other folks, okay. I do have a concern that, you know, our current bylaws allow for removal of an officer by a vote of 10, and this one gives a board chair, not a specific one, right? Governance is people neutral. Power to remove an officer or a chair, and then the board could override, essentially veto that, which is, I think, a fairly extraordinary shift from even where our bylaws were a couple of years ago, whereby chairs, you know, could appoint chairs and vice chairs of committees, and previous directors worked to change that, to put that power, share the power amongst the board. So I do have a concern that's a pretty extraordinary leap, and I don't know what we're trying to solve for, given that the chair, any chair under our current bylaws already does have an extraordinary amount of power. So that was just one piece of concern I have. The second, and this came up when we talked about board operating guidelines last year and a little bit this year, is about speech. So when folks were proposing the board operating guidelines, we were told over and over these are guidelines, because some of what people considered to be offensive, or you know, we have language there about assuming the best intentions and et cetera. This is very subjective. So I do have a concern that our board operating guidelines are being codified into bylaws with language that we all knew would be open to interpretation depending on who is reading or arbitrating the matter. Finally, and this is something that maybe general counsel could weigh in on, it was many years ago, but on the subject of just free speech and what could be perceived as retaliation on the basis of speech, speech that as directors we have a right to. We are elected and we represent a constituency. RTD has been sued on this previously, and that was Holiday v. RTD. I think it was over 20 years ago. 2 directors sued, a third director functioned as counsel. We settled out of court and paid attorney's fees, and it was, I think, a bit of a mess in the press at the time, as well as with certain members of the legislature. So I was wondering if it's okay if General Counsel Snyder can address that. If you have any comments, I would worry about the principle of free speech, which I think we should all be afforded, but also the liability aspect. Thank you.
Ms. Snyder.
Okay, thank you for the question, Director Rusha. I will say the proposed bylaw amendment on its face, I don't have any First Amendment concerns. It would all be in how it's implemented. So the Holiday case that you referenced definitely had to do with a chair of the board taking action that was somewhat punitive on the basis of director's speech. So because they were disagreeing with the content of speech, and that's a pretty fundamental textbook definition of, you know, a violation of the First Amendment. So certainly you all as directors have free speech rights. You don't check them at the door. So that would be obviously something you would be taking into account. Any action to discipline a director couldn't be because you voted no on this, or you voted yes on this, or I didn't like the things you said, you know, sort of the content of your speech. And that is different than, I think, some of the categories of conduct that the board operating guidelines apply to. So it's a little bit different, but it's certainly something that this board would always want to keep in mind, what action you're looking to discipline, and would want to definitely stay far away from anything that was dealing with the content of someone's speech.
Can I ask one?
Yeah, I'm going to just respond with that as well. And again, it's one, I just want to make note too, that not saying this is just specifically for me as a chair, in theory, this would, continue forward unless Director Chandler and Director Banker, during your examination of the bylaws, you find a better procedure. But again, it's overall, if the chair is taking this, if the chair is taking this and is clearly targeting speech, I think that this is the chair taking action based on, violations of our board operating guidelines. So. Yes.
Thank you, sir. And from one former teacher to a current teacher, I know how much you appreciate and value free speech and our Constitution. But as I noted, this is person neutral. So I don't want to interpret something that I heard from council, or I don't want to make a leap. Is it reasonable to assume, to whomever can answer this, that before a chair were to move to make such action, that any chair would confer with council, because what we consider to be, I think there's some gray area on the free speech with board operating guidelines. Is that something that we can assume would happen?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak on this behalf. So I know myself personally as the chair, if there would be any disciplinary action, I would work with Ms. Snyder in regards to that, making sure that we're following the right protocols and right language are used. Again, to respect any director who might be, subject to a potential disciplinary action. I personally would work closely with Ms. Snyder. And again, my interpretation would be future chairs would be as well. So Director Ruscia, if you're okay, I'm going to call on a couple more hands. Okay. Let me get a couple more. Chandler. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the fact that in drafting this bylaw change that you took into consideration my concern that any given chairman might be punitive in their use of this. And so I appreciate the fact that you do have that provision for us as a board to say, this is personal and not productive, and towards maybe speech instead of behavior, and that we can overturn that chairman's decision. So I think that is absolutely a safeguard, and I appreciate you taking that into consideration. So we do, as a board, have the opportunity to hold the chairman accountable in anything that we deem as excessively punitive, which could happen. And we should, as a board, come to consensus and say, no. So I appreciate that we do have that option.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, to clarify, if there's any, if you're like, Julian, you're out of line when it comes to that disciplinary action, or, chair, you're out of line with that disciplinary action, the next full board meeting, there could be a vote to overturn it via 2/3 majority. So thank you for bringing that up, Director Chandler. Secretary?
Yeah, so I appreciate the conversation so far. I actually think Director Ruscia has a point that specificity is good. And so what I would say is I think it makes sense to modify slightly the Section 2 grounds for discipline to say directors may be subject to discipline for egregious and/or repeated violations during their service as a director of any of the expectations outlined in Article 3, Section 1. Which would just make it explicit what you said in the meeting, which is this applies to your term as a director.
I'd be open to that. I'd be open to that. Yeah, could
Yeah.
you?
So the language currently says directors may be subject to discipline for egregious and/or repeated violations of any of the expectations outlined in Article 8, Section 1. That's what it says currently. This would just add the clause during their term as a director.
Okay.
So,
You're adding the language during their term.
yeah, repeated violations during their term as a director of any of the expectations outlined in Article 8. So that just makes it, cabins it in exactly the way that Director Ruscia is asking for, or asking us to clarify.
I'd be open to that. I'm sorry, shouldn't be giving my opinion. So are you making a motion to add
Yeah,
that
I'll
language?
move to add to Article 8, Section 2, the phrase during their term as a director after the word violations.
Okay, Nicholson is the mover. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, Director Chandler is the second. Any discussion on that amendment specifically?
Just.
Director Ruscia? Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I cannot read as fast as Secretary Nicholson, and I was trying to also look at the cart. I heard repeated, but I think the language is egregious or repeated, and I just want to make sure that we're keeping in like a single incident as well as repeated.
Yeah, so
That we're voting on, is I want to make sure
Secretary.
that was the language that you were.
Apologies. So it doesn't change anything else that's in the language currently. So the language currently says directors may be subject to discipline for egregious and or repeated violations during their term as a director of any of the expectations outlined in Article 3, Section 1.
That'd be the adding language. It'd be adding the language. Yeah.
Thank you. What I heard and what I saw was different. I want to make sure that's what we're changing.
Absolutely. Any conversation on this amendment? Okay. Let's take to add the amendment. Is there any no votes on this? Tad said an amendment. Okay. Seeing none, okay, that amendment will be added. 14 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Okay. So now we're back at the motion at hand. Any further conversation on this?
I have a motion to amend, but I'm happy to yield if anyone else has comments first.
Is Director Harwick present? I'm sorry. Director Harwick is, okay, thank you. Okay, further conversation, I just see Director Ruscia.
I'm sorry.
Yes, you're
Did you
recognized.
Okay, thank you, sir. So under, I'm sorry, I don't know what board packet page this is. Let me scroll a second. They're not numbered. Okay, thanks. So I'm looking at what would be Article 9, Section 5, provisions for discipline of the chair. I think this means to say by the chair and not discipline of the chair.
Yeah.
Just a note. But the motion I'd like to make actually is under Section 4. So just to strike everything after ad hoc committee, because, and so we would strike reduction or elimination of expense allocations for local travel and conference expenses, simply because I think that would be very extraordinary. Our local budgets are how we do continuing ed, which is part of our board operating guidelines and previous resolutions, as well as a response to a state audit. It's how we communicate with constituents and the like. And so I am just asking that the power to take away a director's budget, which is how we represent, helps us represent, just be struck from this. So that would be sorry, that was an explanation and a motion at the same time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to clarify, Director Ruscia, you're moving to make an amendment to strike the language in Section 9, Article 9, Section 4, and you would cross out the language saying reduction or elimination of expense allocations for local travel and conference expenses, correct? Do we have a
Yes.
second on that?
Second. Is it Article 9 or Article 8?
Excuse me, Article 8, yes. And second from Hartwick. Okay, excellent. Any discussion on this amendment? Okay. Oh, yes, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. So I fully understand where Director Ruscia is coming from on this. The local budgets are really important, and they do allow us to do a lot of important work and constituent outreach. That being said, if you look at the legislature which recently has had to deal with multiple incidents of discipline, taking away staff, paid staff, and the budget for staff is a not punishment, but is a sanction that they have doled out just in the last couple of months to former Senator Sonia Hawkes Lewis. And I've seen at city councils before and other elected bodies where budgets have been very much the primary mode of of sanctioning an individual or an office, recognizing that it does have an impact on that director's or that city councilor's ability to function as a public officer. But, I think the point is, if you're someone who is violating the rules on a regular basis, there have to be meaningful consequences and, ones that stick. So I don't support the amendment. I think the chair in this instance should be given as much latitude as possible, especially when you consider that, unlike a lot of bodies, we don't have expulsion as a penalty. You cannot remove a director. We cannot remove a director. There's no body that can. Most elected bodies have a way to deal with someone who is severely breaking the rules. We don't. And so in the absence of that ability to take that kind of action, I think we need to give the chair as much power as possible to respond.
Thank you. First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo what Secretary Nicholson said. I oppose this. I understand the logic behind it. I think since we're talking about a full range of behaviors from, I suppose, more minimal that would result in one outcome, but we could have significant bad behavior, threatening. I mean, if you look at the words of what we're focused on in the high range of behavior, I think this is an appropriate tool for the chair to use. And there is the opportunity for the board to overrule the chair.
Thank you for your comments, First Vice Chair Keith. This tool does exist as is, just wanted to point it out. It just, again, gives the authority to the chair. And again, to the point of what is the, proper means to hold our directors accountable, if, you're hearing stories where, just hypothetically saying, but you're hearing stories, directors, aren't properly using their conference time or, properly, using their local travel, whatever it may be, again, hypothetically speaking, then that is something to hold our directors accountable for, is if they're not, using their conference expenses wisely and, they're just using it for travel and not actually attending the conferences, then that is something that at the chair's discretion, if they hear about that, that's something that potentially could be something to hold directors accountable with, and instead of, removing them from a committee or, that might be the more proper way to go forward with. And again, as a teacher, it's ultimately what the learning opportunity is, and figuring out of, hey, these are repeated behaviors that, would be characterized as bad, and this is how we're trying to keep ourselves accountable with it. So those would be my comments on it. Yeah, Director Ruscha, yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. If your proposed bylaw change was very specific to, misusing funds, that would be different, but this is very broad. And at least when I have asked to travel, I've still needed chair approval. But again, I'm just going back to, not everybody can pull out their American Express card and cover the cost of a town hall or travel or what we need to do to work with our constituents. Our budget and for local and travel has been a topic over the last several years, particularly as it relates to equity. So for one person, that could be very punitive. For another, but they could pull out their American Express. For another person, that literally takes away their, that's taking away that is severely impacting a director's level to represent, which I think also goes against not only, again, our board operating guidelines, previous resolutions on training, but even this year's board goals regarding constituent engagement. So that's why I would ask for a yes vote on this amendment. If you're more specific to just conduct at conferences, that would be one thing. I'm asking us to consider the whole picture. It's not about any one person or any one chair, but this is governance, so it should be people neutral. And I just see that as incredibly, incredibly extreme. Moreover, the situation that was referenced in the state capitol was a very extreme situation, but that person in question did not have all of their staff removed, their additional provisions, nor did they have their per diem removed or other things that they would have been able to expense for. They still had access to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further conversation on the proposed amendment? Again, the proposed amendment is from Director Rusha, and it's to strike the beginning at reduction or elimination of expenses, allocations for local travel and conferences expenses, and that is in section 4 under Article 8. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote, and again, we're voting on the proposed amendment, okay? Treasurer Banker.
No.
Director Catlin.
No.
Director Chandler.
No.
Director Geisinger.
No.
Director Guchenritter.
No.
Director Guzman.
No.
Director Hartwig.
Yes.
Director Larson.
No.
Secretary Nicholson.
No.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
No.
Director Pagliari.
No.
Director Rusha.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
No.
I'm also a no, so that amendment will fail. 2, 12, 1 absent. Okay, moving on back to the original motion. And as amended, do we have any further discussion on the motion as amended? And as a reminder, Secretary Nicholson adding in that specific language. Yes, Director Guzman.
So, one, it's unfortunate we even have to have this conversation about bylaws. Beyond that, I'm likely to vote in favor of this because it does have a way to veto the chair's decision and ensure that the board gets the final say. Looking at our board operating guidelines, they apply to all of us in as far as we remind each other that we are all subject to them. Our authority as a board comes from us being able to work together. That's our greatest strength. And when we cannot work together, it does cause problems. So I'm highly frustrated that we're even having this conversation. I just want to put that on the record, and let's get to the vote.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Any further conversation? Oh, Director Rusha.
Thank you, sir. I have a question. So in other bodies, there's a procedure laid out, for how to, bring forth a complaint, so forth. I know it's very light in here. So I guess my comment is I hope that you will be sharing that with us. But I have a question, and this might be for general counsel, because I don't know how it would apply here. But in other bodies, when this is brought up, how do I say this? I don't know if it's executive session, but that process is not necessarily before the public. And that is also to protect people in the event that they have a complaint regarding something very sensitive or protected status. And maybe general counsel can help us understand if that's something that we had to take up. Would we be able to go into executive session, or would all of this be public? So, and I can give a couple of examples. Denver City Council is one, and then as is the state legislature with their complaint process. Thank you.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes, thank you for the question, Director Rusha. So with respect to whether action could be taken in executive session, I think the answer is no, given the open meetings law doesn't allow formal action to be taken in executive session. We would have to look at a case-by-case basis what the specific grounds to be an executive session would be. So I think we're all familiar, one of those grounds that we commonly use is for legal advice. So we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case.
Quick
Thank you,
clar-
Ms. Snyder. Yeah,
quick
Director
clarification.
Ruscia.
Yeah, so what I heard is, so obviously no action taken executive, but perhaps if a discussion had to be had appropriately, that might be possible. And when I say appropriately, I'm talking about when sometimes complaints are of incredibly sensitive nature and conduct, right? Particularly if they're made on the basis of class or other types of harassment.
Ms. Snyder?
Again, I think we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and understand, make sure that we're adhering to the specific bases to be an executive session.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Any further questions, comments? Okay. I'm going to put it to a roll call vote then. And again, we are voting on the bylaw amendments regarding director accountability for the board of directors to adopt the proposed bylaw amendments which detail the grounds process and accountability measures the board may take to hold directors accountable as amended. Treasurer Banker,
Yes.
Director Catlin,
Yes.
Director Chandler,
Yes.
Director Geisinger,
Yes.
Director Guchenritter,
Yes.
Director Guzman,
Yes.
Director Harwick,
Yes.
Director Larson,
Yes.
Secretary Nicholson,
Yes.
First Vice Chair O'Keefe,
Yes.
Director Pagliari,
Yes.
Director Ruscia,
No.
Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. The motion will pass 13 yes, 1 no, 1 absent. Thank you everyone for the party discussion. All right, moving on. There is now our next recommended action, and that is listed under section 16. And that action is for the Board of Directors to review its position on Senate Bill 25-161. Before I jump into further conversation on this topic, I would ask Government Relations Officer Michael Davies to kindly share the latest information on this bill. Mr. Davies, can you provide us an update on 25-161?
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the board. Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer. So with regards to this bill, it has been passed through the Senate. It has been passed through one committee in the House and is awaiting action in the House Appropriations Committee. There were 4 amendments that I communicated in an email to the full board that were passed as a part of floor amendments in the Senate. And then 3 more amendments were added yesterday in the House Transportation Committee. Happy to detail those amendments, but overall.
Would you mind detailing them?
Yeah, so with regards to let me just get my paperwork here. The 3 amendments added largely just changed some language with regards to adding wording with geographic service area with regards to the study and RTD's charge to do a 10-year study. There was some language added with regards to the greatest extent feasible, some changes to the bulk purchasing EcoPass program, and language with regards to the guaranteed ride home program. And lastly, just some changes to recognize that the city and county of Broomfield is also a city and county, because it only had referred to Denver as a city and county in the bill. Those were the 3 additional amendments yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Okay, now that we have an update, I will soon open the floor to further discussion and debate. We had asked for any proposed amendments to our current position in advance, but we did not receive any that directors wanted to bring to the floor, to receive any that directors wish to bring to the floor tonight. Further, as a reminder to this group, we are under no obligation to change our current position, which is detailed in our meeting packet on packet page 160. If there is no affirmative action tonight to change slash amend our position, our current position will remain intact. With that, are there any directors who wish to bring forward a motion or motions to amend our position?
To move consideration of the position and then amendments.
Mr. Chair, I move consideration of
Oh.
our current position on the bill before us.
Okay.
Second.
Which is to amend, okay. Guzman and O'Keefe. Okay. And yes, Director Chandler.
I have a couple of discussion points that I would like to bring up. One of them is an email that I sent to our chairman today, and I'm just going to read the email. I'm writing to express my concern regarding SB 25-161. Notably, the amendment proposed by the RTD board were not taken into consideration during the legislative process. A particular concern is Section 7 of the bill, which prohibits write-in candidates for RTD board. While I understand that the Fort Collins City Council voted in February of 2025 to ban write-in candidates, this action was taken at the local level by their city council. To date, the people of Colorado have not voted to remove write-in access to the ballot. It is troubling that this fundamental right has been restricted by both local city council and now potentially by the state legislature without direct input from the electorate. Furthermore, it is especially concerning that the Colorado State legislative action targets a single elected body, RTD. Such a precedent raises broader questions about representative democracy and electoral fairness. I just want to state that on the record. I am hoping that we can eventually continue our section to amend. I would also like to bring up Section 11, stating that this is under the safety clause, and the safety clause states, the General Assembly finds, determines, and declares that this act is necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, or safety, or the appropriations for the support and maintenance of the departments of the state and state institutions. I think that's excessively overly done. So those would be my two points that I would like to bring forth.
Thank you, Director Chandler. First Vice Chair O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in executive committee, I asked for this to come straight to the full board. There are few pieces of legislation that kind of impact us holistically as this. And so this was an opportunity for everyone to raise concerns like Director Chandler just did and talk through it. I will say that our ability to impact this legislation so far has been behind the force of the full board. And so while it is in every director's option to lobby after we take a position on this, I can tell you that it is not helpful. In fact, I think it's counterproductive and it creates an unfair appearance of chaos on the board. And so I'd ask that we have it out tonight. We can talk as long as you want to, but when this is done, it is the board position. It's up to the rest of you and what you do with that board position, but I'd ask you to consider the potential negative outcomes from not standing behind a board position. Thank you.
Thank you, First Vice Chair O'Keefe. Yeah, Director Russo.
I just wanted to say I concur with what Director Chandler said. Thank you for reading that out loud to us and putting it on the record. And I also just wanted to note that the legislature has not, for any other office by which they have auspices, prohibited a write-in candidate. RTD is singled out, but there was no justification for that. And this is my comment, my follow-up comment, if I can make two, sir. Thank you. The fact of the matter is, this has gone through the Senate. It went through Senate appropriations. It's come to the House. It's gone through, I mean, it was in committee. This will be on the floor in a couple of days. I don't think we can make much more impact on this bill unless we decide as a body to drill down on the amendments that we asked for, and that does require folks to show up and us to show up and to just raise expectations generally. But so I think it's cooked where it's cooked. That being said, I did want to specifically recognize Director Chandler's comments, and thank you for saying that.
Thank you, Director Ruscha. Second Vice Chair Whitmore.
So to those multiple points, I just want to clarify with Mr. Davies that that was a position we took as a board, and we had our menu of amendments, and fortunately, we've got some of what we asked for, but that was not one that was met with a lot of celebration from the bill sponsors or others. So to Director Ruscha's point, the cake is almost cooked, but I do think it's valid that the two of you have put this on the record because it is unusual and a bit problematic. So I think, you know, it's probably a done deal, but on the other hand, I think it's great that it's on the record and perhaps there's more work we can do in the interims or in the future. Is my statement correct, Mr. Davies?
Mr. Davies.
Yes, I think that's a fair statement.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Guzman.
So I have to echo my colleagues here. The write-in candidacy provision is nonsense, and I remain opposed to it. I am a write-in candidate that was elected through that process fairly and justly, sworn in as a director, and I have served honorably with the other write-in candidates that are currently serving on this body. That said, I would also like to put on the record that there was a promise made and not kept with regard to this bill. I sat through endless meetings this last summer, with community, having conversation about this bill that was supposed to be effectively for all transportation in Colorado and not focused on the RTD board solely. And the promise of showing up and dedicating time to do that, both as an elected official, as a community member, as a taxpayer in the district, as a representative of my community, to see this still not being taken care of and demonstrably affected against one agency singularly within the state of Colorado is the height of hypocrisy. Now, that has nothing to do with us. I want to state that for the record because what was promised was not delivered here. Thank you for doing the work through the legislative process. It was brought to my attention that there is perhaps a belief that I have been going to the Capitol to do any work on this bill, have conversations on the side with anybody about this since we voted and we sent this through our lobbyists. I can assure you, I have had absolutely zero conversation about this outside of the board and the agency. I also want to state that because as Director O'Keefe, First Vice Chair O'Keefe stated, once we make a decision as a body, that is where our authority and our power as a body come from. And so if we don't keep that trust with each other, we certainly make us, all of us, and the agency look weak if we are going behind the board in any surreptitious way to have conversations one-on-one to create any kind of deal that changes the board's position. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Director Geisinger.
Since the question is, you know, are we going to change our position? It sounds to me like we should stay where we are. And we didn't ever decide to oppose it. I guess we could consider that, but I don't know that that's very helpful at this point. I think, you know, that Troy and that we've all made the point that's a good one, which is we're far down the road. They're not going to probably listen to us on this, but by staying in an amended position with the same pieces we had before, not necessarily, I'm not saying you have to go out and push that. I don't know that we need to do that, but it leaves that open that people are not liking, you know, at least this one provision. And so that would be my recommendation. I would also add, I listened to the committee yesterday, and toward the very end, there was some mistaken testimony that was about that we have 95% discount on EcoPasses. And then there was a comment that they were looking at maybe requiring RTD to keep that. There is no such thing. And I think, you know, it's important. I just want to put that on the record too, that I hope these sponsors are not going back to require us to keep something. I'm sure that our team, I think Michael and BBMK and our team here, Troy and Patrick, have been doing a great job. So I'm just putting that out there on the record. But overall, I guess I would suggest we stay in an amend position.
Thank you, Director Geisinger. Secretary Nicholson. Bless you.
Thank you. You know, I want to first off say that I think there's been incredible work done on this bill by our government affairs team. When we proposed our amendments, I didn't think for a second that we'd get 3 seats. There's no way, and I certainly didn't think we'd end up with 2 voting seats. And that's what we ended up with. You know, the sponsors, to their credit, and in a way that I genuinely did not expect after last year, have listened. They haven't given us everything we wanted. They haven't given us 80% of what we wanted, but they have factored in a lot more than I would have expected on this legislation. And I think that, you know, at a minimum, we should acknowledge the folks, the legislative team, you know, Directors Whitmore and O'Keefe, as well as our government affairs team, for the significant amount of work they did on this. The second thing that I'll point out is there are some things in this bill that are genuinely good for RTD. The biggest one, and that is under threat right now in the legislature, just having listened to the hearing, you know, yesterday, is that there's a provision that says that apartments are required to do surveys to see if their residents want EcoPasses. And if 51% say yes, they are required to sign up for those EcoPasses. The apartment association doesn't love that for reasons that are probably obvious. It would, however, lead to a substantial expansion in the number of neighborhoods, in the number of apartment buildings that are signing up for EcoPasses. The language is excellent. And so, you know, we don't need to take a vote to support an amendment on that. It's already in the bill. But, you know, I would encourage those of you who want to see more EcoPasses to, in this moment, speak up and say, hey, that's a good thing. We would like our people to help make sure that stays in the bill. Because that's going to be the fight over the next couple days. The apartment association is going to try to take it out. They're going to try to say it's burdensome. And so that's where those comments came from. Because EcoPasses, we don't give a 95% discount. What we do is socialize the cost of all the transit over all the people in the building. And so if 19 out of 20 of them don't use their EcoPass, then you're only going to pay 5% of the cost of the normal cost of the pass, essentially, because you're dividing out the total usage among everyone. So my building has 100 units in it. If, you know, you have, you know, all of the usage is 20% or, you know, even 10% of the people in there, you end up giving each person a much lower fee for RTD usage than they would normally pay if they had to buy a pass themselves. And so the apartment association basically wants assurances that we're not going to go in and say, okay, we're jacking up the rates and we're going to start charging $400 a year or something like that for an EcoPass. That's what their concern and their complaint was. My understanding is that there is going to be changes in the language to basically make it clear that we can't charge more than the cost of the actual usage by the people who are on the contract. So if my building has 1,000 taps, you know, then they would pay for the cost of basically the usage of the people who have the EcoPass. And that's their way of making sure the apartment association understands that they're not going to get hosed by...
Secretary, appreciate your comments. Director O'Keefe.
I just wanted to add one last thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To echo Director Chandler's comments on the writing candidate, the legislature right now is about a third appointed through vacancy committee. That is not a democratic process. That's a
point
party
Would you mind speaking into your microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'd like to go on the record saying that the write-in process does still go to to the voters. Vacancy processes don't. It's not our job to change the rule for the state legislature. It's their job to set the rules for us. So this is a difficult circumstance for us, but I don't think it's an appropriate action that they've done. But at this point, we have argued as best we can.
Thank you. Director Pagliari.
Thank you. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I am curious if I can ask a question through you to staff. This bill mentions that it has to appropriate like $146,000 roughly for this bill. I was wondering if Mr. Davies could maybe explain why additional allocation is needed. And then I have further comments.
Absolutely. Mr. Davies?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Director. That funding is largely for the study, the proposed accountability committee to study among the issues RTD board governance, but there are more issues that are part of the directive for the next iteration of the accountability committee to look at.
Director Pagliari?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for explaining that. That's what I suspected. I just want to say for the record that I believe I understand the intent of including the language that does not allow write-in candidates. But I actually have to say that after hearing dialogue from my colleagues, specifically Director O'Keefe and Director Chandler, I would probably be less aggressive on my stance because I was in support of that language and I understood the purpose because it is a huge responsibility to represent over 200,000 people. And the bar is set rather low in my opinion. It's very difficult to go through the process to get on the ballot. It to some, but not difficult to others. But I do appreciate hearing those perspectives and would probably change my mind on that because of it. I don't think that I would change how we should go about whether we should oppose the whole bill over that though. And then the other comment that I had was just regarding the process. I believe that Senator Faith Winter and Representative Meg Froelich have been in good communication, in good faith negotiation with us, going all the way back to when they offered to meet with us. I got time with all of them. I felt Representative Lindstedt was also very approachable and available for questions before the board voted to have a position when it was appropriate, I think, for more individual one-on-one conversation. And then I did my best. I believe I did not interact with any lobbying after we decided a position. And I think that I just wanted to highlight that they come from a similar place that I do in wanting better transit for our community. And I appreciate their work to make this community, in an attempt in their own way to make transit better in their communities, because those are also our communities. And I think I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Director Pagliari. Any further comments, questions? Oh, Director Ruscia.
Thank you, sir. So the action is like a
Excuse
motion
me,
to.
excuse me, Chair, I've had my hand up for quite a while.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we aren't seeing it. My apologies, Director Catlin. Director Ruscia, would you mind if I yielded the floor to Director Catlin?
Yes, please do.
Director Catlin, if you're still there.
I am, and I'm sorry you're not seeing my hand, but I agree with Director O'Keefe and Director Chandler, and especially with regard to kind of the double standard with respect to the legislature and what they're suggesting for RTD with regard to writing candidates. I believe that we should stick to the amend position at this point. And I don't think that we should fall on our sword, but I do think that the amend position is the best one to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Director Ruscia.
Thank you, sir. I just. Oh. Okay. So when I say cart is cutting out, I'm not joking. Thanks for being gracious with me, but Mr. Chair, if you're, yeah. So if it's okay, may I do both? Comment, question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So first is like point of clarification, in an action item, it's a motion to discuss. And because Cart was cutting out, I'm making sure there's not a motion on the table to keep our current position.
Yeah.
That's what I need to understand.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there's a little bit of confusion there that to clarify, Mr. Kroll, we don't have to make a motion to stick with our position. We would only have to do a recommended action if we're making a change to our position.
Correct.
Okay, and based on the discussion so far, no one's really made a motion to change our position.
Thank you. I just want to make sure there wasn't a motion on the table.
Oh, sorry, point of order.
Yeah.
I did make a motion to reconsider our position. It did not mean we had to change it. So we just need to make a decision about whether we will change or not. To have the discussion, the motion that I made was to reconsider, which means to pull up what we had previously stated, have this conversation, and make a decision as to whether we will change that or not. I want to be clear.
Mr. Kroll.
So if I'm,
Okay, I'm just making sure we're following the proper.
Yeah,
Mr. Kroll.
If at the end of your discussion, you don't have any changes that you wish to make, you can simply withdraw the motion on the
Okay.
table and move on
Thank
to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you. Director Rusha, thank you for the clarification.
thanks. Mr. Kroll beat me to it. Thank you. I do have some questions regarding some of the amendments that came out of the Senate, but I don't want to take up air here. So I'm hopeful that Mr. Davies would be able to sit for a few minutes so that I can understand. They look substantial, some of them. But I would, I would be in a position of just staying with amend. And I understand there are only a few days left of session, but I do think that if we have amendments and if we didn't get them and they were very important to us, then we need to keep pressing on, which also means making sure that our contracted lobbyists, whom we pay handsomely, are pressing forward. It happens sometimes, things happen on the floor, discussions are had, and there's a chance this is going to go to conference anyway. So I think that if we are going to say amend, then we stay and not just say amend, but it really means concur. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, Director Rusha, any questions potentially from Mr. Davies could be sent via email. So thank you. Yeah, Secretary.
I have a quick question for Mr. Davies and then a motion. Mr. Davies, can you speak to what is still on the table at this point? Like, you're in on all of these conversations. What is left to be moved? What is still being actually discussed? What could we take a position on that might actually change something? Is I guess my question, and then I have a motion.
Mr. Davies.
Yeah, thanks for the question. From my understanding, there is no firm commitment of any specific issue that will be offered or not offered on this bill. It may end up just being exactly the way that it is. Otherwise, you highlighted a conversation from the Apartment Association that I believe is being had. Outside of that, I am not aware of any other issues that may be raised on this bill.
Thank you, sir. Secretary?
So I think it's important to clarify to our Gov Affairs team and the sponsors that our only concerns with the bill are the things that we've raised as amendments and that we like or don't want to try to change, not like necessarily, but don't want to try to change everything else in the bill. So I would make a motion that we recommit to only our existing amendments as our recommendations to bill sponsors for what we want to see changes.
Yeah, point of order. So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to be making the motion itself. I mean, I think it's implied that we're revisiting it, that these are what we're actually looking for still, and we're going to still stick with a position to amend. I'm not sure if the motion is necessary is what I'm getting at. So
I believe it is, and here's why. I want to make it extremely clear that we don't have an issue with the EcoPass language. That's what I'm trying to say. It's in there. We're choosing not to take an amendment position on it. We're saying we're cool with it. And I can't make a motion to say, we want to support this without changing it. So saying, these are our exclusive asks to change in the bill, don't mess with anything else, I think is a relevant, motion to make
Director
essentially.
Geisler.
Point of, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sorry. Point of order. That is what is on the table right now. Sir, let's please give the chair the respect he's due. Thank you.
Director Geisinger.
I'm trying to think that through. I still think an amendment position makes sense given what we've said. I don't think that means we have to go, going crazy saying we oppose write-ins. It's not going to happen probably. But I think we stay in the amendment position. I have concerns about, what changes may be coming to the EcoPass provisions at the very last minute where nobody's thought them through. So I don't know that I would want to make a point of saying we have no problem with it.
Secretary.
Just to clarify, are you saying you have a problem with what's in the bill right now or what might be in the bill if they make additional changes? Like the EcoPass language has been in there since the beginning. That's been in there from the beginning. We have chosen not to take position on it, not to ask for amendments on it. No one's run an amendment on it. We are choosing not to run an amendment on it today. I think it's just really important, and I know this because I understand how the building works. I want it to be very clear, we don't have an issue with what's in the bill and what's been in the bill on EcoPass going back to January.
Thank you. So right now there is a motion. Is there a second with that?
Sorry.
Yeah, Director Ruscha.
Director Guzman made a motion, I believe. So I'm sorry. Just,
Oh, yes. yes,
yeah. So I think we have to get through that one first.
Fair enough. Okay. Director Guzman. You guys took
I
a
made the
motion to
motion.
reconsider.
Vice Chair O'Keefe seconded to have this conversation and reconsider. Are we changing or not is the question. I am willing, if you are, to remove my motion from the floor, if you will remove your second, and then we can consider another type of motion. I would, however, just in this moment for clarification, sorry, since I was recognized, suggest we don't need to take up anything different than what we already have in front of us because there is consensus around one issue left on this, and we've already voted on other parts of this where we are in an amend position. So adding anything to it at this point, as you said, the language has been there the whole time. It wasn't brought up before. It doesn't need to be brought up now. Remains with these items. So I'm willing to remove it if you are willing
I
to.
will remove my second and move my bishop to on 6.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Director Nicholson.
So I'm comfortable with that. I would just like to do a final, because I guess it would be an amendment if I wanted to say, let's vote to, I would just like to do a final call. Does anyone have an amendment that they'd like to offer to try to change the EcoPass language? Because if we do, now would be a time for us to say that any of us wants to consider an amendment to strike the EcoPass language or change the EcoPass language. So if any of you have a problem with that language, please tell me now, or yeah, we're closing the door on that.
Well, yeah,
Point of
Director Ruscha. Yeah.
So in our board operating guidelines, we don't assume other people's intent or thoughts. Like, this is getting heated, and I don't know why we're getting heated over EcoPasses. I am now confused as to what I'm supposed to be voting on. I can tell you, I wouldn't move an inch on any language regarding EcoPasses without an extensive conversation with staff that manages them, because I might not know the organizational impacts. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question to whomever can answer. And I would first, if we can, yield to our general manager and CEO. Is the agency okay with the language as is, or is that something we can speak to?
GMCO Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Ruscha, for the questions as it stands, considering that we assessed where we were and in relation to the amendments, we are comfortable with the current position that the board has taken on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Director Geisinger.
I just think we're asking that backwards. It's not Are we okay with it? Are we going to come out with like, we support EcoPass when there's all these other provisions we don't have a problem with? I'd have to go back and spend another round of time to say, yeah, go out and carry the flag for EcoPasses. And I'm a huge EcoPass fan, you know, but I just, I think I'm kind of where Director Rusha is, pulling out that one thing to say, hey, we support this provision. It doesn't make sense to me.
And just to clarify, just real quick, that this board went forward with, our amendments of adding 2 former directors as voting members, 2 current members as voting directors, to remove any mention in the bill of adding any external members onto the board. And the 4th was the writing candidacy. So again, that's what we're still advocating for. That's what our lobbyists are still advocating for. And, I don't want to put a bow on it or anything, but this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that this board is still comfortable where we are at. And this is the conversation we had over and over again. And as Director O'Keefe has kind of pointed out, this is, and our lobbyists will continue to fight for those amendments. And specifically one that I heard a lot was this write-in candidacy. And so I will be addressing that camera right here. Why are we getting picked on when it comes down to the write-in candidacy? That's all I can say if anyone's watching this public meeting later on. So again, just clarifying, I think we had a pretty good conversation. Treasurer Brinker.
I would like to stick with our previous position, okay? If for some reason there is language put into the bill very late in session that we don't like, we go back next legislative session and ask for modification. This isn't, the end all be all. So I'd like hopefully to stick with what we voted on previously and go forward.
Thank you, Treasurer. Director Pagliari?
I just wanted to point out for the record that the creation of the EcoPass was a very highly contested issue. And I believe that staff originally, during the time of creation of the EcoPass, if Director Banker can maybe help jog my memory, was against it. So I don't think that we should use staff recommendation over such an important program. Not to say I don't trust our current staff, but in the past, staff has been against and been for. And historically, I would not recommend going to staff for making that board level decisions like that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Pagliari. Director Guzman.
So I would like to make the motion that we remain with no change on this going forward.
Second,
Okay.
second that motion.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a vote on it. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Any no votes on remaining at the position where we're at in regards to the amend position of SB 25-161? Okay, seeing none, we will stick at a position to amend. 14 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Thank you very much all for this conversation. And again, back to Director O'Keefe's point, this was the chance. This is the opportunity. If there's anything we wanted to change, we have agreed now unanimously as a collective body that these are what we're fighting for our amendments. It is not a good look for us when there are directors who are lobbying other future amendments as this goes forward. So I please be conscious of that as you keep going forward if you have any conversations. I recommend you don't. We have excellent directors here to have conversations with, or myself to have conversations with it. But I greatly appreciate the discussion tonight. All right, moving on. Reported director activities. Director Guzman.
We went before the Ludi Committee, we being Michael Davies and William Soroy and I, to have a conversation about service planning and provision, and also engage in conversation with the City and County of Denver, addressing any of their concerns for our quarterly meeting. And I was also completed a certificate in operator awareness training for safety in a moving vehicle through the National Transit Institute. It's typically done for people who train the trainers, but I participated in that as a board member to gain insight and understanding on how our policies at this level might affect the training and what information is relevant to informing those policies. So I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Director Catlin.
Thank you. Director Pagliari and I attended, along with our, with Jen Webster and Stuart Summers, a Jefferson County EDC Board of Governors luncheon. And it was kind of the first step in re-engaging with Jefferson County in our public involvement. And I think it went really well. And as a matter of fact, we got lots of questions, particularly about safety and security, but it was a really good start and a commitment to engage more regularly with this body, which includes elected officials and business folks. And then shortly thereafter, I participated in the Jefferson County Transportation Advisory Council at their semi-quarterly or bi-quarterly meeting, and just reported on the same activities. And I wanted to thank the team that puts together our monthly reports after these board meetings. You can pick and choose and use those as really good talking points when you meet with elected officials. So I want to thank that process. Excuse me, I'm choking. But it's really a good tool, and I've used them effectively just this last month. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Director O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, and this is positive. We don't always get a lot of positive feedback, but I went to the City of Lone Tree State of the City, and it was their 30th anniversary of being a city. And I counted no fewer than 5 accommodations for partnership from Lone Tree to RTD. And I must ask, is there another RTD? Is it like a different, department or something in Lone Tree? No, this was a appreciation from Lone Tree for the work everybody's doing in this room. So to put aside any discord for a second, you should all be proud of that.
Thank you, Director O'Keefe. Director Chandler.
I had a town hall with Mayor Kaufman this last week, and it was really exciting, very well received. And again, I also appreciate the slides that they put together. I tweaked them a little bit in terms of how many there are, because there are quite a few, but I was able to take a lot of questions. It was a really well-received town hall, so I appreciate that. I also have 2 more town halls scheduled. One is with Councilman Stephanie Hancock. Her district overlaps mine, along with Council Member Sundberg. His area also connects with mine as well, overlays my district. So I'm really getting out into the city of Aurora.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Chandler. Director Whitmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to note a couple of meeting events. Vince Busick, Director Busick, and I attended Thornton Transportation Study Session on the 15th, included CDOT and the 2 of us, and also Mr. Soroy and Mr. Carter to talk about mostly the action of CDOT to do something constructively about I-25 and the segments going through Commerce City, North Glen, Thornton, and a number of other cities. And most of it was regard to the construction timeline and so on and so forth for CDOT, but obviously there was some questions regarding transit service and service at the 88th Avenue Park and Ride, so on and so forth. Very positive meeting again, and great job by Bill and Jesse in filling in the blanks when CDOT kind of spiked the volleyball over their way, and so I appreciated that. Also, to give another accolade for Mr. Summers and his slideshows. Certainly utilized that in presenting to Lead Metro North in mid-April as well. And as I was giving the presentation, I was assisted by one of the members of our CAC who is in that class and also a very active new member on our advisory committee. And then monthly, almost monthly, Director Busick and I attend Area Transit Association, NADA. I don't report on every month. No need for that, but just want to make sure that you all know that that's an august group of municipal and county leaders up in North Metro, and we are always called upon to give a report on what's new at RTD. And oftentimes we have Mr. Davies there, especially during the legislative session. So I appreciate him. So I'll wrap up by just saying kudos to staff and all the things you do to make us look good.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Director Whitmore. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I attended a bunch of events with some of the other RTD staff members, the Denver South event, the Transportation Solutions annual meeting, and also spoke with Downtown Denver Partnership and the city DOTI staff about the creation of a downtown EcoPass district, similar to what Boulder has, to sort of start that conversation. I also met with the city council member for Cherry Creek and the BID there, as well as Transportation Solutions, to talk about the creation of a transit plan for Cherry Creek. They have expressed significant interest in getting a transit plan set up and have been pushing me very heavily to try and help move the opportunity forward to get something where they can really try and invest in public transit in Cherry Creek and partner with us on that. So there's a lot of interest out there, and folks willing to consider, EcoPass districts, willing to consider, additional partnerships, and really excited to see where that goes in the coming months.
Thank you, Director. Any further directors? Director Rusha.
Thank you, sir. So I concur with my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Summers, for your slides. They're very helpful to us, even if we just need a recap. My favorite slide was the Vision Zero one. Thanks. And my apologies to the board chair, because I cannot keep up with the form. So if perhaps we could do something like a summary, maybe not live, but I don't want folks to think I'm not engaging with the constituents. So I responded to, I had 8 constituent calls, 2 RNO calls, 4 meetings on paratransit, and 12 plus or minus, it's late, on our Title VI proposal, which the agency has been communicating, out to the public for a couple months now, but all of which were positive, and I just wanted to report that back. The meetings that I've noted here are ones that are external to the agency, not any internal meetings. These are constituent district based. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Rusha. Any further directors? And on that PSA, yes, I do know this. I know the form can be tedious. It should take less than 30 seconds, in all honesty. But I please keep up and keep track of the forms, because the hope is at the end of the year. And if you need help with the forms, I will sacrifice some time and help out as well. But the big thing is at the end of the year is that just to see, again, for a position where my full-time job as a teacher, we get paid $12,000 to do this position, and just to see at the end of the year how much interactions, how many engagements we're having, and it's music to my ears to hear from all of you about how involved you are with your communities and your stakeholders. So I love to hear that. And fill out the form. Okay. Any other matters? Yes, Director Guzman.
Really quick, just a reminder, we have our call for partnership still active, and there is a deadline. I believe it's the 14th of May. So community, if you're listening, please, please, please file for your grant applications for partnership, because that's how we get down to the local level. We are looking out always for the regional transportation district, but we partner with our local members to be able to provide additional services where they are needed, where we may not be best suited to provide that service in our planning, but we can work with you to do it in yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Any other matters? Dr. Rusha.
Thank you. Just 2. So on the matter of the form, I was actually going to bring this up. I don't, that was directed at me about filling out the form, but it would be helpful feedback if you don't mind. The form asks us to fill it out every time we respond to a constituent. I do not have staff, and I'm expending a lot of hours between chair duties and regular duties, which is why maybe we can make adjustments on the form itself or the required fields. I know how to do homework. I also have to sleep. So with that, we can take that offline and maybe be open to feedback about how the form works. I did also just want to say, I don't know if this is other matters, but it's time to bring it up. I'm also guilty of this. We're not all speaking into our microphones. And today, I think perhaps just with the passing of former Director Broom, we were a bit quiet. It was hard for CART to keep up. And so if you look at the transcripts, there are a lot of ellipses. So I was also guilty of this, and I would just remind folks to speak into your microphone. Additionally, a shout out to Director Pagliari, who often announces who he is, which is also best practice in terms of accessibility. And I forget that more often than I don't. So just wanted to say, and thank you to everybody for being gracious, because CART was cutting out today. Thank you for being gracious with me. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Just quick comment. I would double check the form itself. It should just be major stakeholder. I should say major stakeholders. It should be stakeholder engagements, not necessarily constituents. So just want to clarify that. Any other matters? Okay, seeing none, motion to adjourn. Director Chandler, thank you. And we are adjourned as of 9:02.